Should we get started? Okay. The Senate Judiciary Committee will come to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Barely. Nine senators here, but okay, we can go ahead and get started. We're going to go through a number of bills that are not, I don't think, that controversial. And the first one we'll start is Senate Bill 51. Senator Cosgrove, is he here? Senator Cosgrove is not here. Okay. The second one is Senator Hanger, is Senate Bill 98. Promise to appear after issuance of a summons.
Mr. Chairman, I've been asked by several people to let Senate Bill 98 go by for the day. Okay. With your permission, I would like to make that request. There was an amendment to be offered.
Okay. Without objection, Senate Bill 98 will go by for the day.
All right.
We'll be back on Monday.
The other bill I have here, Mr. Chairman, is
Senate Bill 102.
102. And I'm always reluctant to come before the Judiciary Committee because it's a mixed blessing if y'all report one of my bills, because then I got to invest time down the other end of the Capitol waiting for my bill to be heard. But this one was requested by a sheriff in Augusta County, where one of his deputies was was chasing someone in Augusta County. They went into Waynesboro, and so when the deputy got out to talk to the individual, he he rammed his car and took off through Waynesboro. So they got him, and he was informed that he could not make the charge from the incident that happened in Waynesboro legitimately. So there's a simple, and we ran this by the Commonwealth Attorney in Waynesboro and our very capable staff here, and they came up with this language which corrects that deficiency and allows this charge to be made by warrant by adding on line 22, and any criminal act committed during the close pursuit. Okay. So it's a fairly simple addition there which cures this and allows him to request the warrant then to place this charge.
Somebody wrote on to be passed by for the day, but you want to go ahead and amend Senate Bill 102 to fix it or something like that?
Not this one. I didn't intend to.
I mean, 98, well, okay.
98 was the one that...
I wrote down 102 as well, but this one, you want to go forward with it. But it doesn't need amending?
I'm not requesting an amendment, no.
Yeah, Senator Peterson, you have a question?
Yeah, let me make sure I got this straight. So, let's say... I got it. Okay, let's say Bo and Luke Duke are going down the mountain road, and Sheriff Roscoe is chasing them, and they go across the Hazard County line. Now they're in next county, and they apprehend him within, does that have to be a mile of the county line to still have an arrest power? So they actually apprehend him in a different county, and the question is, one, whether or not they have arrest power, and then two, whether or not they can charge him with an offense, I don't know, either under county or state law, for an act that took place in that other county. Is that basically?
That's right. That's the issue, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yeah.
In the city.
Any questions of the patron? I have a question to council. I always thought that if you steal a car in Lynchburg and drive it to Roanoke, every county along the way has jurisdiction over the larceny. I've always thought that, because my father, who was a judge, told me that once.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
That is correct. So why would we need this bill then?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, well, let's see, staff, can you answer the question?
Larceny is a continuing crime, and so that's why you get the result that you asked about. But this addresses a situation for which the law has no provision, and that is if the officer in hot pursuit of someone observes other crimes being committed, one in one jurisdiction, another in the next jurisdiction, the officer is no longer required to go to each individual jurisdiction to appear before the magistrate. He can do it all before the magistrate in the jurisdiction where the arrest is made.
Okay. All right, Senator Obenchain? Okay. All right, so there's no problem with the bill?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there any
Move to report.
discussion from anybody in the public? Okay.
Move to report.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Second is to report the bill, Senate Bill 102. All in favor of the motion to report the bill 102, vote aye. All opposed, vote no.
Ayes 13, no 0, 1 abstention.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Okay,
committee.
thank you very much. Go ahead. Okay, now the next bill, next page.
Senator, we have Senators Cosgrove or Hashmi presently. We've reached out to their office.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, Senator Cosgrove would like his bill to be passed by for the day.
okay. Without objection, Senator Cosgrove's Senate Bill 5051 is by for the day. Okay, we'll see him on Monday. The next bill is Mason, 2 bills. Is he here? Senate Bill 191? No? Okay, we'll jump ahead. Senator Hashmi, is she here?
She's on the way, Senator.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, pardon.
all right. Well, meanwhile, Senator Searle, we wanted to do your bills last time. You weren't here, so we'll get Senator Searle's 3 bills. Bang, 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 right? Okay. Senate Bill 6, Senator Searle,
Mr.
maximum
Chairman.
number of judges.
Senate Bill 6 is to authorize a new circuit court judge in Prince William County. It was blessed by the Judicial Council. There were some hiccups in how the data was analyzed in the last weighted caseload study we did. They're getting killed there, and I can get into the details of it, but the Judicial Council has blessed it. The money's in the budget, and I'm happy to talk about all the problems we have getting trial dates in Prince William County if we
Okay.
need to chat.
Is there anybody would like to speak for the bill?
Can I just ask
Yes, Senator
a
Overton.
question? So are there judgeships in other circuits that have been authorized by the Judicial Council that aren't encompassed by this?
I don't think so. I think this is the only one this session, but I'm not.
So this is, and further questions.
Senator Overton.
So, I mean, we've both been around long enough. I mean, we know that many members of this committee and this body, you know, perceive a problem in my county and ask for an additional judge to be created. This isn't one of those. This
No.
is one that is justified by the National Center. It's not singling out Prince William, not leaving behind others. This is all that they've authorized, correct?
Senator Searle.
This is the only one the Judicial Council authorized. The center, when they did their study of Prince William, whenever it was 2 years ago, apparently the county at the time didn't report their jury trial data correctly. They only reported they had like 1 jury trial for the year, when in fact they'd had a whole bunch. And so the way Prince William was reported in the study was not consistent with the way it should have come out in the data. The chief judge of the circuit wrote a letter to the Judicial Council explaining her position. They looked at it, vetted it, and they approved the position. This is not my idea, this is their idea.
Mr. Chairman, and that's my concern. I mean, once we open this door and start letting somebody from Rockingham County come and say, we need another judge, it opens the door all over the state.
Yeah, that's not what this is.
Okay. Is there anybody, any more questions of the patron? Anybody want to speak in favor or against the bill?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who'd like to speak in favor of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chair, at this moment, there are no hands raised.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move to report.
And Senator Deeds seconds the motion.
To finance, Mr. Chairman.
It's got to be to report and re-refer to finance. All right, all in favor of Senate Bill 6, Senator Searles,
You get
vote
me?
aye, all opposed, no.
Got it, all right.
Vote is 50.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Okay, the motion carries. Okay, second bill from Senator Sherrill is Senate Bill 64, Proceeds of Compromise Agreements, Minors Investment in College Savings Trust Accounts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this bill arose out of some discussions that I had with VTLA and Virginia 529 over the last 12 months. So for those of you who do personal injury work, you're probably aware that in order to get an infant settlement blessed, you got to take it to a circuit court judge, and a guardian ad litem has to review it and confirm it's okay. And there's a good number of circuit court judges that believe that putting an infant settlement into a 529 plan is not an authorized disposition under the code, and so these monies end up going into these savings accounts, making like 0.5% or whatever for the. And so basically, we sat down with Virginia 529, and they said they could create a special classification of funds so that if an infant settlement is allocated to them, it goes in one of these age-weighted portfolios where it becomes ripe the closer you get to age 18, and it can only come out by court order or go to a college, which is what the bill basically requires. And again, I worked on all this with Virginia 529 and VTLA over the last year to come up with this language, and I think we've got it where it needs to be. And this would, I think, would allow Virginia 529 to have a lot, probably several more millions of dollars in their system, and it would give our, injured children, I think, a much better return on their settlements than what they're getting right now.
Okay, Senator Overchain has a question.
I think this is a great idea. I mean, the present system that creates too few options. The structured settlements wind up getting essentially stolen by creditors who come in and buy it for pennies on the dollar. The court, putting it in court, pays nothing, and 20 years of time value of time is lost, of money is lost. But so if the child doesn't go to college, do you have to go to court to get it out, or does the 529 plan make provision for the money to go to that child?
I believe under in lines 38 through 43, I think if it doesn't go to a college, you have to go to a court to get an order to have it come out of the 529 plan if it's not going to a college.
So the child ultimately is going to have to pay for that?
Pay for
going to court
to
get it out?
Right, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Peterson.
Yeah, I had sort of the similar question, and I have 529 accounts for all my kids. But, most young people, especially most young men, don't go to college. Or if they do, they might go to a community college where the financial hit will be minuscule. If they don't go to college and they pull the money out, do they pay a penalty? Do they have to give back the interest? What happens in that case?
You can ask Virginia 529 that. I think they're on the line, but I can't remember whether there's penalties or not for there must be a penalty of some sort for withdrawal for a non-college related purpose.
But this is something that a court has the option of doing, not required.
It's just an option, right? But if the child decides they don't want to go to college,
Right.
10 years after a settlement, and they want to use it for something else, then there could be a consequence for that.
Right.
I think VA 29 is on to answer questions if there are any like that.
Yeah, are they on the line? I think that's what we need.
Okay. Does anybody from the college savings plan have anything to say about it? Anybody from the public have a comment on the bill?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in favor of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
I think the Virginia trial lawyers Mr. Dix might want to say something.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Mark Dix on behalf of the Virginia Trial Lawyers Association. We support the bill. We appreciate Senator Surville and 529 working with us on the language. Thank you.
Okay.
So Mark, do you know the answer to those questions?
I don't. I'm sorry, Senator.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chair, at this moment, there are no hands raised.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
We operate by motion, yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Who's this? Oh, yes, Senator McDougall.
I think we ought to put a provision in that it reverts with no penalty at the age of 21 if not used for college.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Sherrill.
Well, I think if the penalty issue, if there is any, is federal. It's federal tax law. I don't think it's something we can, because
Yeah.
Yeah, they were here last week, so, she said she's on and trying to join, according to my staff. Leslie.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, state your name.
Hi, I'm Leslie Cradell. I'm the Government Relations Director for Virginia 529. And the Senator is absolutely correct. It is a federal law issue. Unfortunately, federal law requires that funds be used for qualified higher education expenses, as that term is defined in federal law. And if they are taken out and not used for those qualified withdrawals, then there is a potential penalty that could apply unless it's for death, disability, or receipt of a scholarship for the student. So there are some federal restrictions in place. And we can certainly provide clarifying information on those if there are further questions.
My question, I think another question is, are there any restrictions other than the federal tax laws?
In terms of taking the funds out of the accounts?
Yes.
No, it all goes under the federal tax code. And so we just operate under that at the state level. There would be no additional restrictions on top of that, aside from what the court has imposed as part of the appeal.
But there would be, if somebody went to court to change their mind and say to take it out and not go to college, the petitioner would have to file filing fees and maybe get an attorney, right?
I believe so, yes, but I would defer to Senator.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Serval.
one other thing, you could also use these expenses for trade school, I believe, this money for trade school, not just college or community college. That's another use. But, I mean, these are things I think you'd have to think about if you want to put it in here, right?
Right. Okay. But again, the judge would have the authority, the option to do it or not to do it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Obenchain.
I'm inclined to agree with Senator Serval that it's maybe a better option than some of the others, even if the child doesn't go to college, because we already allow structured settlements. And any of us who do that work have had heartbreaking cases where children have cashed in those structured settlements. This can't be that bad. And if they go to college, they get a significant return on that investment. I'm in favor of the concept. I'll probably vote for it, but I hope that maybe as it works its way through, we can find some answers to some of those questions and maybe.
Are there any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
Move to report.
It's been moved to report, and Senator Serval seconds the motion. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to report the bill, Senate Bill 64, vote aye. All opposed, no, vote no.
Okay. Ayes 14, noes 0.
Okay. Senator Serval, the
Thank you.
motion carries. Senate Bill 106, the retired circuit district court judges under recall have to be evaluated every 3 years, I believe it is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Senate Bill 106 is a result of some budget language that Senator Peterson, I believe, got in the budget to look at a study of expanding our reviews of retired judges. Senator Peterson, myself, and Senator Stewart met with Shannon Hurd and to sort of look at how the retired judge evaluation system was working, whether we could expand it. And so basically what this bill does is this expands the same system we have for retired circuit court judges to district court judges, so that every 3 years they'll put out a JPE evaluation for a retired judge, and then every 3 years that list will come before this committee and we can decide whether or not to decertify a judge that sits as a retired judge. Based on those reviews we get back. And I think the packet they gave us, the retired judges they showed us had between, I want to say, like 3 and 60 reviews or 3 and 40 reviews or something like that. Because retired judges just don't sit as much, right? And so they don't get back as much feedback on them. And one other thing I just want to note for everybody's awareness, I was talking with the Supreme Court staff and they explained to me that their practice is that if a member of the General Assembly were to call them up and ask the retired judge not sit anymore, they take that very seriously right now, which I didn't even know, but in any event. But that's only for district court judges, not circuit. So anyways, that's the bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Obenshain.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with this, but I do want to mention something for the committee. You know, Senator Stewart worked on this. I know Senator Peterson, Senator Servell, I worked on it years ago. You know, I do think we need to review some of these retired judges. They definitely age out, and sometimes they need to have somebody take a look at whether they ought to be sitting. But by the same token, we've had a couple of situations that I don't think worked like we had anticipated. I would hate for us to have a system in which a single legislator can have an axe to grind and make that call and have a perfectly good judge removed from circulation. And I would hope if somebody's coming out of that rotation, somebody is also looking at whether that's a good thing or not a good thing. So, I think there are two sides to that sword, and it can be abused.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Any discussion? Yes, Senator Servell.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Senator Peterson.
Yeah, I just want to follow on to what Senator Servell was saying, and actually was the chairman's budget amendment, but and I think you were part of that committee.
Oh, yeah, he was.
Yeah, there can be a very wide variance in the quality of the retired judges that sit in cases, and in some cases, these are judges that served several terms. In some cases, they were judges that were not reelected, and that was intentional. I think we need to monitor the retired judges because when they make a ruling, it's just as binding as a ruling by a circuit court judge that is elected. And I don't think, the Supreme Court just doesn't, they're not out in the field seeing people work every day. And so I do think we need to have a system. And I also agree with Senator Obenshain, it should not be somebody unilaterally saying this judge shouldn't sit anymore. I think there needs to be a process, and they ought to have a chance to come in and defend their record. And if there are public comments and public concerns, that ought to be taken up also. So I just think that this is good that we're putting a structure in place. So I would support this bill.
Okay. Any further discussion? Is there a motion? Moved. Senator Peterson moves and Senator Servell seconds the motion to report Senate Bill 106.
Yeah.
All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, no.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Okay. 14-0, the bill passes. We have Senator Hashmi here. Senator Hashmi, you have a bill, Senate Bill 240, newspersons crossing police lines. Thank you. Senator Hashmi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I had sent a request that we strike that bill. If the committee would so move, I'd be pleased.
Without objection, Senate Bill 240 has been stricken at the request of the patron. Do we have to vote on it? Okay. All right. All in favor of the motion? Senator Sasslaw made the motion. Senator Dees seconded it to strike Senate Bill 240. All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries.
Ayes 13, no 0.
Okay, 13-0. Okay, thank you. Senate Bill 262, mushrooms.
Thank you. Yes, mushrooms. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And, let me begin just by sharing that I did not expect to be carrying this legislation this year, but I've had several months to speak to many, many researchers and advocates and individuals who are much more knowledgeable than I about the efficacy of plant medicine. And so after listening and learning a lot, I am introducing this bill to decriminalize psilocybin. The problem that we face currently in this country is that we're facing a staggering mental health crisis. And here in Virginia, almost 20% of our citizens are living with some sort of mental health issue. Especially in Virginia because we are impacted by our many military installations. We have a large population, at least 10 to 20% of veterans who are experiencing PTSD. And research in many institutions of higher learning, including Johns Hopkins, our own VCU, and other research facilities, are demonstrating that psilocybin has the potential really to alleviate a lot of these mental health issues, and especially for those folks for whom other medications are simply not working. Preliminary research is showing that it also perhaps helps with substance addiction. We know that substance abuse, substance addiction is a direct corollary to the rising use of opioid treatment, and psilocybin might be an appropriate antidote to providing medical care service for folks with depression and PTSD in ways that our other drugs are not able to do. So this bill is seeking to lower the penalty for the possession of psilocybin from Class 5 felony to a civil penalty of no more than $100, and then the penalties would be allocated to our Drug Offender Assessment and Treatment Fund. And this is following a similar pathway as we did in Virginia for marijuana decriminalization. This does not allow for the manufacture or sale of psilocybin, and it is to be used with caution and care. The civil penalty will remain, but now the punishment will actually match the alleged crime of using plant medication. Psilocybin is not addictive, and in fact, many other states are moving in this same direction. One of the largest advocates that we have is Representative Dan Crenshaw from Texas, who is a big supporter, but also a military veteran himself who suffers from PTSD. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I present this bill, and I know we have many folks who are interested, perhaps online to speak, but we have some folks here in the audience
It will
too.
remain illegal for those under 21? Is that right?
Just for those over 21, it remains illegal for anyone over under 21, yes.
Okay, any questions of the patron? Any question of Senator Hashmi? All right, anybody want to speak in favor of the bill or speak against the bill?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in favor of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Why don't we go ahead and hear those that are here first, and then, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Brian Filas, and I'm here in support of SB 262 because I literally owe my life to psilocybin. I've suffered from depression most of my adult life, and when all the traditional treatments failed me, I started to believe my only option was suicide. Fortunately for me, my wife, and my 2 boys, I found my way to this medicine before it was too late. I ended up attending a retreat in the Netherlands where these substances are completely legal. Traveling overseas was an expensive option, but it ended up being worth every penny. Next week, January 25th to be exact, will mark 2 years that I took that life-changing journey, and I've been depression-free ever since, something I never thought I could ever achieve. I owe it all to this tiny mushroom. Decriminalizing these substances is an important first step in allowing other Virginians access to this healing path without fear of arrest or prosecution. I respectfully request that you spend some time researching the safety and efficacy of these completely natural substances and consider passing this legislation. Thank you.
Any questions of the speaker? Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Senators and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of SB 262.
And your name?
My name is Mark Miller. I have a PhD in clinical psychology. I am licensed as a professional counselor, and I am certified as a substance abuse counselor. I have also had the honor to learn about these medicines for the last 25 years. Please let go of all of the rhetoric that you around these medicines and that this is going to fry your brain. Powerful, yes. Dangerous, no. They assist with healing PTSD in our veterans, assist with recovery from addiction, assist with end-of-life anxiety. They help with depression. I've sent you all an email with a link to a conference that was held on December 9th, which included VCU professors, Johns Hopkins professors, veterans of the Health Administration, leaders in addiction recovery, veterans, psychologists. Please do your own research and let go of the old view and begin anew. Please vote for SB 262.
Okay,
Thank you.
Any questions of the speaker? Okay, thank you very much. Next.
Hello, my name is Will Nelson. I'm the co-founder of Decriminalize Nature Virginia. We're the advocacy group that pushes for legislation like this. I graduated from VCU of psychology, a degree in psychology. That's not really relevant to my testimony. I'm here to represent the folks across Richmond, the folks across Roanoke, the folks across Charlottesville, Northern Virginia, and all parts of the Commonwealth who have suffered through this pandemic, who are encountering intense levels of stress and all the things that have come with COVID-19. And I'm here to advocate that the reason we need to do this now and pursue this now is because people need to heal, Virginians need to heal, and if we want folks to come back from this at full productive capacity, ready to make a difference in the world, ready to meet up with their families, their friends, and go back to work, then this is a part of that. And people currently cannot do that because they're afraid of going to prison over finding healing for themselves. So I ask you to consider moving this forward so that Richmond, so that Roanoke, and so that Virginia as a whole can heal and move beyond this pandemic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, there's some people that are online, I believe, that want to speak.
Wiley Gray, please unmute and begin your testimony. Erica Steele, you will be next.
How many do we have? Okay. No more,
Chairman.
no more than 60 seconds, please. Yes,
Ask
go
the
ahead.
patron a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Senator Peake has a question of the
Mr. Chairman,
patron.
can this legally be prescribed by a doctor currently?
Not currently.
Has anybody brought a bill to allow a doctor to prescribe it legally?
I believe my understanding, and our staff can help with this, is that we have to first decriminalize it, and then the goal is to move it towards the medical efficacy. Perhaps staff can answer that question.
Sir, staff, Charles, or Steve?
Because, Mr. Chairman, I would say we had legal prescription marijuana before it was decriminalized.
I don't know the question.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, Steve and I were
got-
talking about
We got a question, so who would like to answer the question about?
What's the question?
Mr. Chairman, the question was, is there a bill to allow doctors to prescribe this before just decriminalizing it?
No.
There's nothing pending,
No bill.
nothing pending.
No.
And then, Mr. Chairman, another question.
Go ahead, Senator Peake.
Is that something that could be done, just like we did with marijuana? We allowed marijuana to be prescribed medically before we had decriminalized. Could that not be done by statute?
It could be.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
But that's not this bill, yeah. Senator McDougal.
And this might be for Steve or Charles. Is this on the federal prescription of drugs that are illegal? And what's the status there?
Mr. Chairman, Senator McDougal, I
Steve
think
Benjamin.
that it is, but Linda, yes, I have consulted an expert, and it is on the federal registry, yes.
Mr. Chairman.
On the federal registry, okay. Senator McDougal.
So regardless of what we do here, even if this were to pass, it would still be illegal to possess it, and you could be subject to federal criminal penalties.
Is that right?
You could be the relevant, well, yes, the answer is yes, you could be subject to a federal prosecution. However, the sort of, the use that I understand the patron to be addressing is not one that would likely receive federal interest.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
So yes, but.
Senator McDougal.
Steve, but if I'm reading this correctly, it doesn't limit the use. There's been articulation of some potential uses, but people could use it recreationally, be subject to a civil penalty in Virginia and federal criminal penalties.
That is correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions of the patron? Okay, let's go ahead and listen to people. 1 minute apiece. on Zoom.
My name is Wiley Gray. I'm a former Marine and the founding director of Veterans of War, of a Manassas-based 501c3 nonprofit that connects teams of veterans to guided psychedelic group therapy designed to heal the invisible scars of war. I've been a Virginia resident for more than 7 years. The veteran population that I represent, 18.6 million strong, is facing an unprecedented mental health care crisis where we lose more veterans to a preventable outcome annually than we did in nearly 20 years of active combat operations abroad. After my 8 years in the Marines, I returned home suffering from PTSD, and at points I was actively suicidal. It was only after intense guerrilla healthcare work with plant medicines in South America, after I was reconnected, that I found any sort of meaningful path towards recovery, that I found hope. Veterans shouldn't have to undertake dangerous missions overseas in order to meet their mental health care needs. Time and again, studies have shown that these medicines are life-saving, yet every day we continue to lose 20 veterans to suicide, supporting failed prohibition of proven solutions. In the veteran community, it's said that we all may leave the war, but that doesn't mean that the war leaves us. Veterans deserve a safe and effective way to leave the war and simply come home. My work has allowed me the opportunity to do exactly that. The fact that I'm presenting this testimony before you today is a direct result of the efficacy of these solutions. My community needs this medicine. Join me saving lives by supporting this common sense legislation that Veterans of War enthusiastically endorses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Before you
Senator
let-
Peake has a question.
I had a question, well, for
Of
that
the
speaker.
Yeah.
Or what,
You go ahead, Senator Peake.
or Madam Chair. Is that speaker, is there a prescribed dosage, a frequency, an amount? How do we know? I mean, the military who are taking this, how do they know how much to take? Who gives it to them and at what levels? And how?
Does anybody have an answer to that? You go ahead.
If I may.
Yes, go ahead.
This is an incredibly complicated solution, and one of the unfortunate realities of prohibition is that it doesn't allow us to keep our hands on the production, let alone the distribution of any of these substances. It's desperately necessary that we find a way to take it out of the black market and out of the incentivized use for money that's coming with it, and that we regulate this in a smart way because veterans' lives are on the line every day. Right now, we rely on community leaders, typically in other countries where this medicine is already understood to be a safe and effective path towards recovery. We trust and we search to make sure that we have the best research possible in order to know how best to treat ourselves. But you're absolutely right in identifying a gap in the healthcare that is currently available in the United States and specifically in Virginia. We need to do better.
Okay, thank you very much. The next person who would like to speak on Zoom.
Erica Steele, please unmute and begin your testimony. Cedar Wood, you would be next.
Hi, my name is Dr. Erica Steele. I'm a naturopathic doctor here in Virginia Beach, and I just returned from Peru working with the shamans out there on plant medicine. I've treated over 30,000 patients here in the state of Virginia. I'm in general family practice. And so in terms of your dosing questions, it really depends on the patient. It depends on the weight. It depends on what you're actually treating with. Traditional psychotropic medications do not impact things like PTSD, some of these depression, anxiety syndromes. What we're seeing a lot of is veterans leaving the state of Virginia and going to other countries to be able to get treatment. And then as they're coming back, it's really difficult with the post-integration. We see this as a first step. This is really one of many to decriminalize, and also consider psilocybin is not necessarily a medicine that is used recreationally. I know perhaps back in the 60s, maybe some people still in this room enjoyed that, but it's moved well beyond that, and now it's really being used on more of a microdose level. And veterans are finding these ways on their own. And what we want to do is we want to create more of a streamlined approach. We want to get people out of the closet and also get them from potentially creating more risk and harm to themselves as well as others. And so those are really most of my talking points. I can speak for a while, but to consider the time. This is also a very good revenue source for the state of Virginia, eventually, just as CBD as well as marijuana. And with that, I'll yield my mic.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any questions of the speaker? Okay, next speaker.
Cedarwood,
Try
please.
to keep it to 60 seconds, please.
Sure, absolutely. So thank you, Mr. Chairman and the committee. Thank you for the time listening to these testimonies today. I wanted to speak in favor of SB 262. My name is Cedar Wood. I'm a resident of Charles City County. I'm a lifelong Virginia native growing up in Henrico County. My story 5 years ago, I was actually drugged and raped by multiple men in Richmond, one who I thought at the time was a friend. This sexual trauma affected my daily life. I was in a state of deep depression from the PTSD from the event, to the point where one day I decided I no longer wanted to live with this pain. I tried pharmaceutical treatment from my primary doctor, but nothing helped, and I had severe side effects. I no longer wanted to live with this pain, and I was having suicidal thoughts. I wanted to kill myself. Through an act of divine intervention, I found the strength to make it through my darkest night. That same week, a dear friend of mine who was also in a dark place had gone to a psilocybin mushroom ceremony in a country where it was legal, and without that plant medicine, she wouldn't be here today as well. She shared her story with me, and I had reached out and went out to sit in ceremony as well. I wouldn't be here today sharing my story without the help of plant medicine and psilocybin in my healing journey. These naturally occurring plant medicines have the power to heal trauma and PTSD. I'm a testament to that myself. So access to naturally occurring plant medicine and fungi is our birthright. The time has come to take plants out of jail and provide access to Virginians to heal naturally. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the speaker? Okay, any other speakers?
Mario de la Fuente Revenga, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Hello, everyone. I am Mario de la Fuente Revenga, doctor in pharmacy and doctor in medicinal chemistry. I do research on psychedelics at VCU, not far from where this meeting is taking place. I can speak on behalf of other researchers to highlight that the current findings on how psychedelic medicines can help people have a real world substrate. It's not anecdotal, there is a biological substrate to these things. My patients are cells, tissues, and mice, but the narrative goes all the way to patients, real human patients. Psilocybin can bring alleviation to those in need, and the current burden, legal burden, delays the process to do research to get the answers that we really need. Every unnecessary delay can be yet another veteran taking their life. The criminalization can aid our research by enabling observational studies, for instance, and do so at a very low price. The safety of these drugs and the lack of addictive potential is very well established, and I could speak more to that if needed. Questions related to dosage, frequency, and how to administer that have been brought up are very much, this really need a body of research that even us licensed researchers have trouble getting our hands on. So in that regard, I think that the decriminalization move will really aid in getting the momentum to enable the kind of work that we do to really pinpoint the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any questions of the speaker? Okay, not any other speakers?
Mr. Chairman, there are no other hands raised at this moment.
Okay, any further questions, Senator Peake?
Mr. Chairman, it's Steve down here.
I'm sorry. Yes, Steve Benjamin.
Yes, I just wanted to add some context to the answer I earlier gave to Senator McDougal. While possession of psilocin remains a Schedule I controlled substance on the federal schedule, so too does marijuana remain a Schedule I controlled substance under the federal framework.
Right.
And I say that just to add context to my answer.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Senator Peterson.
Is this product legal in any of the 50 states that comprise the United States of America? Which ones? Because I just went through Wikipedia. I didn't see it listed.
Oregon? Does anybody know the answer to that? Oregon? Oregon and D.C.? Okay.
Is that D.C. serious or is that a joke?
No, I think they had a referendum. I don't know whether it passed. They had a referendum last year.
Okay.
Okay, so Oregon.
At least Oregon and maybe D.C. Any
If
other
it failed
questions?
in D.C., that's pretty.
Senator Norman.
If I may.
Yeah, who's this? Who's speaking?
Wiley Gray again, Veterans of War. SB 86 is the entheogenic proposal for DC, which passed, as well as Initiative 109 and 110, both in Oregon. Both of those laid the groundwork for this to be approached in a medicinal way, and moreover, for it to be a valued part of the mental health care toolkit.
Okay, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Historically speaking, early in my legislative career, I came in where the mantra was get tough on crime, and we got particularly tough on some drug-related issues. And it's amazing, over the period of time, attitudes change, public perceptions change, but also medical research changes. And I'm so old, I remember when people were put in the penitentiary for possession of marijuana, and you see where we are now. A little closer to home, not too far from where I live, is a veterans hospital, and I have had a number of clients that have come back from Afghanistan and other areas suffering from PTSD, and they have only been able to get relief through medicinal disbursements that don't come out of the VA hospital. And so this is not the first time I've heard about this drug. Also, Eastern State Hospital is not a stone's throw from where my law office is, and I've done thousands and thousands of commitment hearings there, and it's shocking how many of them come through that are triggered by depression. And I've had a family member that has suffered from depression, and it is insidious. It is absolutely insidious. And so I just want to state that sometimes I think, we have to rely upon intuition and take a change. And I listened to the testimonies today, and they're not testimonies that I've heard for the first time. So I'm going to support this because I genuinely think it's going to provide some relief and help to individuals.
Okay. Any other questions? Senator Peake.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Hashmi Patron. I am also swayed by the testimony of the military, but, and I think you may very well get it out of this committee and maybe off the Senate floor. But I think in the way that it is written, without any guidelines by counselors or medical folks or anything along those lines, or any kind of prescription, that it will not get through the House the way it is written, where any single person, college kid, fraternity kid, whatever, can have this for fun, and it'll be a civil penalty. I bet the House is not ready for that. My suggestion would be, I would ask that you, if we could take this by for the week, that you could look at some safeguards that talk about per recommended by a counselor or something along those lines, or to make it where it's medically prescribed, if we could do that in the week. Because I would be in favor of that, as I was for medical marijuana, but the bill, the way it is written, where anyone can possess it for any reason, I don't see how that would get through the House in this session.
Is there any other comments?
If I could just respond to
Senator
Senator
Ashley,
Peake.
go ahead.
Senator Peake, I certainly appreciate what you're saying, and I think we have an opportunity to continue to work on the bill, put in the safety rails that you are recommending. I think that would be a really good direction. And Senator Norman, thank you so much for expressing your support, because I think I too was persuaded by the testimonies of so many people, most especially our military veterans, who come back haunted by the trauma that they have experienced, and that this is a really necessary direction for us to go in terms of advocating and supporting mental health healing for so many folks in our community. Thank you both for your support.
Okay. Any other comments? Anybody have a motion?
Do you want to let it go by for a week?
I would be happy to do that, and we can continue to work with council.
I'll move that it go by.
I'll second that.
All right, there's a motion been made by Senator Sasslaw, supported by Senator Peake, that the bill go by for the week, Monday or Tuesday, next Wednesday?
Monday or Wednesday.
Which is a week, okay. Go by for the week. We don't need a recorded vote.
Thank you.
Yeah, voice vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. We go by for the week. Yeah, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr. Chair.
Ashman.
Thank you to the members of the
And
committee.
the other people that spoke very dramatically and very eloquently. We appreciate that very, very much. Okay, moving on then to Senator Mason. Senator Mason.
Good afternoon,
has,
Mr. Chairman.
Two bills. Senator 191.
191.
Compensation of experts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Senate Bill 191. This addresses the compensation of experts that gauge competency and sanity. We haven't raised the fees that we pay them since 2007. They make $750, no travel. Last year, we had 3,142 competency orders. There are 244 people registered to provide them and to do these evaluations, but only 57 did so last year because we're just paying no money, paying $750. And but with the graying of America, we're getting to the fact that a lot of people are getting ready to retire. So new psychologists that are coming into the field, well, at least you're graying, I'm gone, are not doing this. I interviewed I worked with the lady that remembered that I had brought this to you 2 years ago. The gentleman that testified is going to retire in a couple of years, and there's a brand new gentleman that does it in Richmond. He's been told when he goes out to Western Virginia, he's the only guy that'll come out there and do it. He doesn't get paid mileage, and he only gets paid $750 to do it. I, of course, have a budget amendment, which is 3,142 times 450, rounded it up just a little bit. Yeah, that's big money. But it's time for us to address this because we seriously need more people involved. And if they're not getting it done privately outside of the hospitals, this is just another step in our conversations towards our state-run mental facilities that are piling people up for these matters.
Okay. Is there any question of the speaker, of the patron? My only question is, I'm not sure it's enough.
Well, it does say reasonably compensated in the paragraph, Mr. Chairman, and if we don't at least get that, we ought to amend that paragraph because there's no way that's reasonable.
You're right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Norman.
Mr. Chairman, this happens to be an area that I come across in the practice of law as I pretend to be a lawyer. And I can tell you that in our greater community right now, there is one person who is doing these evaluations. And what you find, the situation is that as you're trying to get someone to professionally do the evaluation, that your client continues to languish, incarcerated, but more importantly, we can't move forward on a final appropriate disposition of it. And I just say I applaud Senator Mason on doing this because it is an acute problem in the area that I live in.
Yeah, I would agree from my experience too. That's why I said I don't think it's enough. But anyway, any other questions? Motion, is there no further questions? Senator Peake moves to report.
Send to Finance, Mr.
Yeah, I'm afraid it has to be referred to Finance, Mr. Chairman.
And Senator Peake makes a motion. Senator Norman seconds the motion to report and re-refer to Finance. All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, no.
Senator Peterson, Senator Morris is prompted.
Oh, my bad.
Ayes 15, no 0.
The bill is reported and re-referred to Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Senate Bill 199.
That is staying in this committee, Mr. Chairman? There was some conversation about it being re-referred. Is that here?
It's re-referred to Finance.
No, sir, that's the last one. 199, is that, that's?
No,
okay.
I'm talking 191 just was re-referred.
191 goes to Finance, but we're talking about
199
199 now. Does that stay in Judiciary or go to General Laws? Sir? There was some conversation about it being re-referred, so I'm just asking, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want to go to General Laws? Public auction of personal property to satisfy a lien.
It's storage liens and selling the contents.
I have not heard that somebody wants to re-refer to General Laws. No? I haven't heard that.
If I could comment on this.
Yeah, Senator Norman.
Senator Mason, you might want to give some thought to perhaps carrying this over for a week. And I say this, that for a couple of years, I have been working to try to circumvent the requirement that foreclosure notices be advertised in the newspaper. Mm-hmm. Because with another hat on, I see the disproportionate charge that is made by the Fourth Estate and the classified ads to do that. And that has some financial implications. There actually is embedded in the budget some funds for a local circuit court to run a pilot program on that, and I'm wondering if there's a potential to perhaps tie this in with it so that we could come back with some persuasive evidence rather than just what we know empirically. But it's your bill, but I just wanted to share that with you.
So was that suggestion to take it by for the week?
Not for
I'll
the
accept
year?
that. I was unaware of that, Mr. Chairman, so I thank the gentleman.
That for the year or the week?
Just a week. I'd rather not take it by for the year.
All right. Motion's been made to pass it by for the week. Is there a second? All right, it's moved and second. All in favor of the motion to pass it by for the week? Is the voice vote, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries.
And are we re-referring it to general laws or bringing it back here? I'm sorry.
I have not heard that
You here.
somebody wants to go to.
Okay, that's cool.
It'll
Okay,
be
thank
here
you.
next Wednesday.
Yes, sir.
One week.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, okay. All right, moving forward. Let's see. Senator Morrissey? Right. Let's see. Senator Obenchain, criminal cases. Senate Bill 123, sentencing by jury. Turn the clock back a year. Is that right? Yeah.
Mr.
Senator
Chairman,
Obenchain.
it actually is, compared to the 400 years of history, it's just a second in time. We had 400 years in which we had juries sentencing people here in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Only 2 states that do it, right?
Notwithstanding that, last year we gave to criminal defendants the ability to say, I want a jury to determine my guilt or innocence, but I don't want that same jury making the determination as to what the consequences are of my guilt. The solution would have been much easier. Say, that criminal defendant can simply take a judge on everything or a jury on everything. But we didn't do that. We gave the criminal defendants essentially their cake and eat it too. If they want a judge to decide their case, they ought to have the judge decide guilt and innocence as well. And this change that we made last year, we've seen just the very beginnings of its impact. More and more criminal defendants are exercising that split option of allowing juries to decide guilt and innocence because they think they have a better chance with jury, but then judges to decide sentence because they think they have a better chance with judge. And as a consequence, criminal trials are stacking up. Those of us who have civil cases, they are getting delayed for years.
Do you do any criminal work?
I do not. I do exclusively courtroom work, exclusively civil work, but the right to trial by jury is embedded in the Constitution, not just for criminal defendants, but civil litigants as well. And if we deny civil litigants access to the court system, that's a serious constitutional problem. And I respectfully submit that maybe it's time to take another look at this. I would ask us to step back and make this change back to the system as it existed for 200 years.
In the federal system, the judge does all the sentencing. And it's true with like 48 other states, I believe.
Well, I, for one, happen to think that, for example, in the legislature, we do things right here in Virginia as compared with federal system. We pass our laws, go home, meet payroll, and earn a living under the laws we pass. Federal system, I'm not so concerned about that.
Okay. Is there any questions of the patron? To roll the clock back?
Well, just a little bit.
Yeah, Senator Norman.
Mark, do you, or Steve Benjamin, do you recall if and when the governor's, the Supreme Court's order suspending the speedy trial situation expires?
Didn't it expire in June?
I have no idea.
I didn't know there was such an order.
Okay. Any other questions, patron? Any speakers? Anybody want to speak? Got somebody speaking for you, I guess.
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in favor of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Go ahead. Your name?
Chairman Edwards, my name is Bethany Harrison. I'm the Commonwealth's attorney for the City of Lynchburg, here on behalf of the Virginia Association of Commonwealth Attorneys. We are in support of this bill. As it was pointed out by Senator Obenshain, we changed hundreds of years of criminal procedure in one fell swoop last year, changing what was previously a jury recommendation for sentencing after a criminal trial. I emphasize recommendation to say that the jury did not have the final say. It always went back to the judge to make that final decision after considering sentencing guidelines and a pre-sentence report. Now for our jury sentencing recommendation, jurors, citizens only have maybe a couple ways of having input on what they believe to be appropriate punishment for crimes committed in their community. One is to petition you, their representatives, to change laws, and the other is to serve on a jury. And we took that away from them when we changed this law. This law was passed for one of the main reasons that some people believe that there was a jury penalty that chilled defendants' invocation of their constitutional right to a jury trial. I can tell you in the city of Lynchburg, that was not the case. In October of 2020, from that point forward, the number of jury trials we had set was around 65 and 60% defense request. When this law changed in by September of 2021, that we saw an increase of up to 145 juries being requested. Everything from misdemeanor appeals to shoplifting and, of course, felonies. And it was a 90% defense request. There was no funding provided to help us, not just us, criminal defense attorneys, courts, court personnel with this increased workload. BACA has polled its members with a survey and found that it has increased our workloads by 500%. In the city of Lynchburg, we stack juries 3 and 4 deep for a day, and due to COVID mitigation measures, we only have one courtroom that we can try jury trials in. So we have 3 to 4 juries scheduled for this one courtroom. We're opening up civil dates, as it was pointed out. It's very difficult to obtain a civil jury trial date because we are taking them up with criminal dates. So is this really serving justice? To not allow our citizens to have a say about the crimes committed in their community, about what punishment they should have? Is it just to make criminal defendants have to wait longer now to have their trials heard? With bench trials, they don't take as long. You can try multiple cases in one day. A jury trial takes longer, so again, that adds to the clogged dockets here. It's pointed out about the federal system that, don't they do this in the federal system? Only judges sentenced in the federal system. Unlike the federal system, our Commonwealth attorneys are required by statute to prosecute all felony offenses in the discretion for misdemeanors. A lot of us prosecute a lot of misdemeanors for a number of reasons, unlike the federal system where they can pick and choose the types of cases. So they can have more time on their dockets to hear these matters. I sent a letter to House Appropriations and Senate Finance last year about this bill, saying we can try more cases. That's what we do. We're trial attorneys. We just need the funding and the support to be able to do this. These other states that have judge sentencing only have 3 times as many prosecutors as we have here in the Commonwealth. So based on this, I'd ask that you support Senate Bill 123 if we want to consider going back to judge-only sentencing or only at the defendant's election, have a jury sentence, that we have a study on this so that we can appropriately deal with the workload implications that this involves. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Sherrill.
I have a question. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Bethany Harrison.
Ms. Harrison, nice to meet you. I had a question. Did the Virginia Commonwealth Attorneys Association put in a budget request asking for additional prosecutors so that they can, perhaps instead of changing the law, comply with it better?
We are having a time study that will be performed this year to determine how our time is spent and to give minimum staffing standards, because as you know, we're currently funded based on, I think, what felony offenses in circuit court. And so to account for diversion courts and all the other things that we do, we'd like to complete that time study so that we have a better picture of how we're spending our time so we can make the appropriate requests.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, all right, thank you. Next, yeah, Senator Morrissey, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Harrison.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for your presentation, which I came in about halfway through, but I got the full flavor, I think.
Yes.
First of all, do you know the number of states that prior to this law change last year had jury trial and jury sentencing?
Was it around five or
2.
6? Okay.
2. Would it affect your argument if you knew that every state that has jury trial and judge sentencing and not judge sentencing has between 1.2% and 4.1% of their felony trials go to jury, irrespective of whether the judge is sentencing or the jury? Did you know that?
No.
Okay. Would you not agree that there really needs to be some time period for this law that took effect last year to go into effect and see after we all expected an initial uptick in juries? That's just common sense. But wouldn't it be helpful to see after 6 months, a year and a half, if the jury requests by defense attorneys did not level off?
Well, that's why we asked for there to be a study on what manpower is needed to address this, as opposed to what we did have happen, and we see that our workload has increased exponentially. It is, we're facing great increased amounts of stress in this age still of COVID and people having to quarantine, things of that nature. And all of it has kind of been a confluence of increased workloads. You fear for employee burnout because of the grind that it causes, yes.
You talked about people's rights that were affected. Would you agree with me that if somebody decided not to take a jury trial, which is both a state and a U.S. constitutional right, because they feared a runaway jury, for lack of a more artful expression? And by the runaway jury, I'm talking about defendant is charged with distribution of a gram of heroin, and he's in a conservative jurisdiction, and the sentencing guidelines are 6 months to 12 months, but the jury gives 22 years. That's what I mean by a runaway jury. Would you agree that for those defendants that say, I can't risk that and plead guilty, even though they have substantive defenses, that's a chilling effect on a United States constitutional right?
Well, I would say that if the chilling effect is the statutory punishment range, then that statutory punishment range needs to be changed. But that's not what we've seen in the city of Lynchburg. Even for mandatory minimums, it actually has incentivized people requesting juries because they see as well, at the end of the day, I get this certain amount of time, so I may as well ask for a jury and see where I go with 12 people as opposed to one judge.
Penultimate question. I certainly, and I agree with you because you say it, that's what the way you do it in Roanoke. But I want to give you a scenario, and you tell me if you find this.
Yeah.
Sorry? Lynchburg, excuse me. Beg your pardon, Ms. Harrison. If you see any problem with the following, take Stafford County, where the sentencing guidelines are for a crime, for a distribution of a modicum of a Schedule 1 or 2 drug is 6 months to 18 months, and the prosecutor offers 6 years, well in excess of it. Defendant says, no, I'll go to the judge. And the prosecutor uniformly, without exception, says, no, we demand a jury trial, knowing they're going to get a conservative jury that could give that 22 years. Do you realize how chilling that is on the defendant's right and perhaps the defense attorney who doesn't want to commit malpractice to say, okay, I'll plead guilty? Do you see where that could be a problem?
Well, again, if this body does not believe that the range of punishment is appropriate for that particular crime, that can be changed, through legislation. But I also think it's important for jurors, for members of our community, to have a say in the crimes that are committed in their neighborhoods, in their cities, in their counties. And if that is a community norm for that neighborhood, then that's the citizen speaking.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Morrissey, go ahead.
On the juries, though, they don't get the sentencing guidelines like the judge gets, correct?
Correct, but
The juries aren't aware of all of the different permutations that a judge is aware after perhaps years and years on the bench, correct?
correct. And again, those factors can be also addressed in legislation, what the jury can consider.
Accordingly, all things being equal, who is best positioned to sentence? A jury who has no sentencing guidelines before them, may never have sat on a criminal case before in their life, or a judge who has the sentencing guidelines, who has sat on thousands of cases and could put that particular case in perspective to all that is at the bar, to all other cases. In that situation that I just described, who's in a better position? Judge or the jury?
In that situation you described, it has been, up until last year, the criminal procedure of this Commonwealth, that the judge made the final decision. The jury had a recommendation. The judge then set it for final sentencing with a pre-sentence report and considered the sentencing guidelines, having all measure of youthful offender treatment, all these different measures before them that the judge could consider before issuing the final sentence.
And Mr. Chair, this is my last question.
Okay. Senator Morrissey, go ahead.
Final, as Senator Obenshane would say. You are not speaking for all prosecutors, and you would agree that there's a group of progressive prosecutors representing 42% of the Commonwealth that agree that the proper approach is jury, trial, judge sentencing, correct?
I don't know their current percentage. I think there's been some change in the membership of that group. There is a contingent, but VACA operates by consensus vote, and the consensus of our membership has said that they support this legislation.
Okay, thank you, Senator
Sarah,
Morrissey.
thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, next speaker. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Nicole Whitman. I'm here as the Deputy Attorney General on behalf of the Attorney General's office. I run the criminal division for them. We're here to speak in support of this bill. I was a prosecutor for 26 years prior to coming to the Office of the Attorney General. I spent some time prosecuting in the state of Florida, where I'm originally from. I also prosecuted in the great counties of Arlington and of Loudoun. And I can tell you, I don't have numbers for you specifically, but I can tell you without exception, just anecdotally, having tried hundreds of jury trials myself in these different jurisdictions, that I have never seen, whether it was as the trial lawyer myself or as the deputy Commonwealth's attorney, chief deputy Commonwealth's attorney, or for the short time that I was the Commonwealth's attorney in Loudoun, a runaway jury, as the senator speaks of and asks of. Is that something that someone should be afraid of? In the instance where a jury has come back with a larger sentence than what was the recommendation or what was expected by the defense attorney based on the negotiations that we had back and forth and we're not able to come to a consensus on, therefore ending in a jury trial, those sentences have, without exception, again, this is just my personal experience in these three offices, those sentences from these juries have almost always fallen squarely within the guidelines. There is also the protection, the added protection that these are, as my colleague from the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office states, these are recommendations. These are not sentences. These are recommendations. And we do have the fail-safe of judges who are put in place by you all, by the legislature, who have the benefit of all the things that Senator Morrissey is concerned about, the pre-sentencing reports, the history of the defendant, and so forth, that they can consider those and they can roll those sentences back, and sometimes that does happen. So we would suggest respectfully that while the senator is correct, that this is rolling back to last year, it is Virginia is a unique place. Virginia is a wonderful place to live, and we are honored to have the citizens of Virginia be able to be heard in this unique way. So we would support this bill and ask that this bill pass.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, any other speakers?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, if I could comment, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Senator Norman.
I listened very carefully to it, and I can just go on my anecdotal experience in a Hampton Roads jurisdiction where I have a very significant civil case that I am trying to get to a jury. Because of the avalanche of the criminal cases where juries have been requested, the earliest date they could give me was July of 2023. And I am hopeful, as Senator Morris suggested, that maybe this is just a rush at the change in the law. I think one of the challenges we had that when the law was enacted, that the courts really did, and the Commonwealth attorneys really did not have an opportunity to, and we didn't provide the resources for them to ramp up to deal with that, even if they had the physical space. But Mr. Benjamin, who is ever diligent, was kind enough to take a look. And here is a concern that I have. On January the 22nd of this year, the Supreme Court order that has suspended the concerns for speedy trial expires. And if in fact that order is not extended, the crush of criminal jury trials is going to continue on it. And if it is not extended, Lord have mercy, what's going to happen? And I do worry it's not our individual problem, but for those of us who have the privilege of practicing it, it is going to create something of a challenge, because those criminal cases, particularly if the speedy trial order from the Virginia Supreme Court expires, then the courts have got to accelerate the hearing of those cases, and they're going to do so at the expense of civil litigation.
My suggestion is everybody wear a mask. There are some speakers.
I move to report.
There's some speakers, I think, I've been told there's some speakers online.
I was trying to help.
Raman Fatihi, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Good afternoon. This is Ramin Fatihi, Commonwealth's Attorney for the City of Norfolk. I'm here on behalf of Virginia Progressive Prosecutors for Justice, representing some 40% of our population. The General Assembly did the right thing last year. They honored the Sixth Amendment right to the Constitution. There are no second-class constitutional rights. The very increase in criminal juries that we've seen, my jurisdiction about 50%, as high as 250% in other jurisdictions, demonstrates the point that we made, which was that Virginia's jury sentencing and jury penalty law chills the right to a jury. This is a question of fundamental rights and of due process and of morality. The second issue is one of resources. We do not subordinate constitutional rights to concerns about fiscal impacts. We agree that more resources would be helpful in dealing with this issue, but the solution is not to leave the resources the same and take away people's rights. We have a historic budget surplus. If we do not devote it here to fundamental rights, to what do we devote it? Finally, the argument about community standards in Virginia. There's no need to go through the catalog of criminal punishment practices that we have abandoned over the last 400 years when they have ceased to be useful. A respected judge in my jurisdiction and former legislator described jury sentencing as amateur brain surgery. It is traumatic to jurors to make them pick a number out of the air. It is unscientific. It is no better than random chance, and worse, because it is a due process problem. There are other solutions to if there's a concern about heads I win, tails you lose. The solution is not to roll back the clock to the 1780s. I would urge that the committee vote against this bill and to maintain this important advance in our law.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any questions of the speaker? Okay. Is there another speaker? One more speaker.
Yes, Mr. Chair. There's Kimberly Dyke Harsley. Would you please unmute and begin your testimony?
Greetings, Senate Judiciary Committee members. I am calling, actually, one of my senators is there. My senator is there, District 22, Senator Peake. I am here to oppose Senate Bill 123 unless it is amended to say that juries are required to stay within sentencing guidelines, or until legislation has been passed requiring juries to stay within sentencing guidelines. I come today on behalf of Parole Virginia Advocacy Group. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the speaker?
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, I think you have a motion, and I'm going to make a substitute motion
Okay,
that the bill be passed
all
by
right,
indefinitely.
First of all, there's a motion to report by Senator Obenchain, and there's a substitute motion by Senator Deeds to pass the bill by indefinitely. Is Senator Sheriff Serval, you have any questions? Been second.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just briefly
Yeah,
close.
go ahead, Senator Obenchain.
You know,
Go ahead.
I was thunderstruck, and maybe I misheard, but what I heard was the progressive prosecutors of Virginia suggest that trial by jury is somehow amateur brain surgery. That kind of contempt.
A judge said that.
That kind of contempt for the decision-making authority, whether it's suggesting that whether it's guilt or innocence or sentencing, I mean, that demonstrates a significant contempt for the fact-finding, the community standards deciding authority of the men and women of the Commonwealth of Virginia. These are the people who represent the community, and I find that pretty offensive.
Okay.
So I would suggest that this is common sense legislation. I would hope that the motion to pass it by indefinitely
Okay,
would fail.
you made the motion. Senator Deeds has substitute motion to pass it by indefinitely. All right, any further questions? The motion's been made to pass it by indefinitely. All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, no. Pass the bill by indefinitely.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
9-6. Okay, the bill has been passed by indefinitely. Second bill, Senate Bill 124, misuse of power of attorney.
Mr. Chair, this morning I heard from my good friends with the Wills Trust and Estate section of the Virginia Bar Association with some suggestions with respect to that bill. I would ask that it go by for the day.
Okay. Senate bill without objection, Senate Bill 124 will go by for the day. The next day would be Monday.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a similar motion too?
I'm sorry, yes, Senator Norman.
Yes, sir, because I know you're looking for a date to continue them on page 6, Senate Bill 148. If I could pass that by the week also, please, sir.
All right, Senate Bill 124 will be passed by for the day.
We'll work on it.
Senate Bill, what'd you say?
148.
148.
On page 6, sir.
On page 6. You want that to go by for the day?
Yes, sir, thank you.
148 by for the day also? 148. Yeah, 148, it was Senator Norman's bill, public health emergencies. Okay? Both of those, without objection, will go by for the day. Okay?
Mr. Chairman, last bill, I hope there isn't.
Senator Obenchain, Senate Bill 221, circuit court clerks.
I'll be
will
shocked
indexes.
if anybody is interested in this other than members of this committee. Senate Bill 221 deals with an obscure process. If I write a will, many clerk's offices, well, every clerk's office in Virginia has the statutory authority to allow me to deposit that will in the clerk's office, and they will hold it. They will hold it. The law requires them to index it, but that index is not necessarily made publicly available. So if I write a will and I leave it in the clerk's office in Rockingham County, unless somebody goes in and actually asks the clerk to go through that drawer or something like that, they'll never find that will. So what this does, and some clerks have said, I'm not going to accept them any longer, which is probably smart. But they've got a ton of wills in there that have been deposited for decades. So this simply says that they shall develop an alphabetized index of these wills and shall post it online. Now, it's not disclosing any of the contents of the will. Nobody has authority to go get that will that I may have deposited until after I die, and they have to be one of the statutorily authorized people to go get it. So this isn't going to allow anybody to gain access to my will until after I die, And only then if, it's the executor named in that will or somebody who falls in the statutory line of authority. So we've submitted a budget amendment for this. This was suggested by clerks, by my clerk in Rockingham County, and I would respectfully submit this is just good common sense.
Okay, any questions? Yes, Senator Morrissey?
Senator, I know very little about this area of the law, but I was listening.
Doesn't involve juries.
Right.
Keep me from talking.
But I listened to you very carefully. What would be the effect on this will that was alphabetized, and then there was a subsequent will, I don't know what the term is, that, not a codicil, but another will that came after the will that was filed in the clerk's office?
The one filed in the clerk's office is revoked by that after executed will.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Morrissey.
Even though that after executed will was not filed with the clerk's office?
Absolutely. It's like putting it in a drawer. It's like leaving it in your lawyer's office. It's like putting it in a safe deposit in the bank. It is revoked by a later executed will, whether somebody has access to it or not. Commissioner of Accounts, any Commissioner of Accounts could, I think, verify that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Deeds.
Senator Obenchain, did your clerk tell you how much it would cost to develop this index system? And is it anticipated that the entire cost be borne by the locality?
I don't know offhand how much it would cost. If it winds up being unduly expensive, and I assume that will be addressed in Finance Committee, if it winds up being unduly expensive, I would suggest a good half measure would be to simply delete the word online and to say that they shall maintain an alphabetized, publicly accessible, searchable database.
Well, I just asked the chair, and I don't think the Finance Committee's asked for this bill.
I think Charles, no?
They have?
Okay, they've asked for the bill. All right. Is there any further discussion? Is there a motion to report and re-refer to finance?
So moved.
Been moved by Senator Peterson. Senator Deeds seconds the motion.
Sure.
All in favor of the motion to report and re-refer to finance, vote aye. All opposed, no. Vote no.
Thank you.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay. Thank you. 15-0. The bill is reported and re-referred. Senator Peterson has to have two quick bills.
Yeah, two quick ones.
He had Senate Bill 207, purchase of handguns by retired law enforcement officers.
Right. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, before I get to that, I had Bill 208 standing on civil actions, and I'd like to take that by for a week while I continue
Senate Bill
to
208
dream
of
about it at
Peterson's
night, perhaps with them.
Is passed by for the day without objection.
Okay, that gets me to the next bill, which is Senate Bill 207, which is the purchase of service revolvers by sworn law enforcement officers. This is a bill that was a request brought to me by Sheriff Stacy Kincaid of Fairfax County. It came out of here 2 years ago, I believe unanimously, and then washed up in the shores of the rocks and the rocks of the House of Delegates based on some issues that had nothing to do with the merits of the bills. But the bottom line is it's a courtesy that we've traditionally extended to retired law enforcement officers, and Sheriff Kincaid can explain the distinction which makes this bill necessary. So it would apply to all her deputies and not just those that are full-time. So I'd let her make that explanation. And she should be in the queue. Sheriff Stacy Kincaid. You got her?
Sheriff of Fairfax County.
Sheriff Kincaid, please unmute yourself and go ahead. Sheriff Kincaid, I see you speaking, but there seems to be an audio problem with your Zoom setup. It's not being picked up by the Zoom room. Sheriff Kincaid, we still can't hear you. Apologies.
call her?
She's speaking, but her computer's microphone isn't picking up.
Okay, we can't hear you.
It seems like a pretty simple change. You're allowing people that have been part-time officers as well as those who've been full-time officers to
Right.
purchase their service
And
equipment.
I think the testimony 2 years ago was she has a number of deputies who are full-time police, and they served and then basically purchased their service revolver and then came over to the sheriff's deputy's office,
Are there
sheriff's
people
office.
opposed to the bill?
No, I don't know.
That move to
Okay, all
report.
right, let's ask any question. Anybody, any questions of the patron? Anybody else want to speak? The sheriff, we cannot hear, so, all right.
Mr. Chair, it doesn't seem like there's anyone in the Zoom room. who wishes to speak.
Nobody else is in the Zoom. Anybody physically here would like to say anything, one way or the other? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll move to report.
Is there a motion to report Senate Bill 207, purchase of service handguns or other weapons by retired sworn law enforcement officers? Is there a second to that motion? Senator Deeds, seconds the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, no. Vote no.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15-0, the motion carries.
All right.
Okay.
Highly effective.
I have a couple of bills that some people I believe would like to speak on it. And I'll come down and Senator Dees will take over the chair.
I might have a coup here, Mr. Chair.
Take the chair from there or the chair's desk.
Let's take it from here.
1 moment, please.
You can just vote for me too.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, Senator Edwards, you have 4 bills? Is that correct? What's your first bill?
Legal time.
136?
Yeah, Senate Bill 136 increases the statutory cap for fees to court-appointed counsel in indigent cases. This is not the public defenders, but rather court-appointed attorneys. What we've done is double this. Charles, would you like to explain the bill? It doubles the amount from what to what?
Mr. Chair, it basically just doubles all the caps throughout the bill, so it's like.
Mr. Senator Edwards, I assume you have a budget amendment?
Yeah, we have a budget amendment.
Okay, so this bill, if it's reported, will have to go to finance.
Yeah, it says in district court, a sum shall not exceed, it goes from $120 to $240.
Right.
For all the work that they have to do, which often is a whole lot more than that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that does have to go to finance.
Okay. I think we understand the bill. Are there those that want to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, we do have one person on the Zoom who would like to speak in favor.
Okay, let's do the Zoom before we do people in person.
Ramin Fatahi, would you please unmute and begin your testimony?
Yes, Ramin Fatahi here once again on behalf of Virginia Progressive Prosecutors for Justice. We ask that that this bill be referred successfully to finance. This is again a basic due process matter. It's a matter of high quality justice for all stakeholders in the system: accused people, victims, and prosecutors.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Bethany Harrison on behalf of the Virginia Association of Commonwealth Attorneys. We also support this bill for the same reasons.
Okay, thank you. Are there people that are opposed to this legislation in Zoom land or in the audience?
Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised for opposition.
Okay, the bill's before the committee. Report? Okay, got a motion, and I think was that a second as well? Okay, motion and a second. Are there other motions? Are there further discussion? Please open the roll. If you're in favor of the bill, vote yes.
Somebody against this?
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, ayes 15, no zeros. You have another bill, Senator Edwards.
Yes, the next one I'd like to bring is the Court of Appeals of Virginia bill. It's emergency
143.
clause, Senate Bill 143, and I think Monica Mundy may be on Zoom to explain the bill. They've gone over it. We had a few minor changes, and then there's some other changes that, after reviewing it very, very carefully, Monica Mundy, I think, should be online to explain the various changes in the
The
bill we
notes
passed last
indicate
year.
that this bill was based on some issues identified by Boyd Graves and VTLA, so are we to understand that it's a Boyd Graves recommendation?
Actually, I think originally I was asked by the Supreme Court, if I'm not mistaken, but we had a few changes, but I think the Boyd Graves has also looked at it as well. But I was advised that Monica Mundy from Roanoke, maybe, okay. Monica, would you like to say something? Thank you for
Yes,
joining
good
us.
afternoon.
Thank you very
Good
much.
afternoon, thank you. Senator Edwards asked me to kind of walk through some of the changes here. A number of these were matters that came out of the Boyd Graves Conference. There is also one that comes from the VBA, and so I'm here wearing both of those hats today. So Senator Edwards, if it's okay with you, I'd be happy to walk through some of these changes.
These are cleanup changes for the bill.
Yes, so most of these are technical changes with two exceptions. There are two fairly significant substantive changes, but hopefully not controversial ones. So the first part is 801-626, dealing with injunctions and petitions for review. Under the current legislative scheme for interlocutory appeals, there are two different kinds of interlocutory appeals. One proceeds as a petition for appeal, and the others proceed as petitions for review. This one deals with petitions for review, and those are for injunctions and for immunity appeals. The immunity appeals, they can now be taken in an interlocutory fashion. That's a relatively new change. So what this does, you'll see starting at line 15, we've got just a little cleanup language. And then there is language reflecting that this statute covers both preliminary and permanent injunctions. This simply reflects the current rule, 5:17 and 5A:12A. They both provide that the injunction appeals can be a preliminary or permanent injunction. So just
Okay, hold on.
clarifying.
Can we slow
The
down?
next
Senator
line-
Peterson has a question. I think.
Yeah, Louise, I'm trying to talk. I've got an issue here because there was a reason why we kept injunctions out of the jurisdiction of the Court of Appeals is so they could go directly to the Supreme Court so there would be finality. Scott, you're shaking your head. That was my amendment 2 years ago or a year ago. So the bottom line is that was intentional, that you didn't have to go through 2 appellate reviews if you got an injunction, or if you were challenging an injunction, you could get an immediate finality by going straight to the Supreme Court. So
I think the
this is going to
point
be an
is,
issue.
the point is that in the 2 years since, we've changed this jurisdiction pretty dramatically.
Well, that was part of the jurisdictional change,
Okay.
Senator Deeds, is that
Okay.
I said you have to be able to get finality, and so that should go straight to the Supreme Court. It should not go through the Court of Appeals.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Surville.
I have a vague memory of some discussion about that, but I believe the way the bill is written right now, review of injunctions go to the Court of Appeals, and this is looking to clarify that. So that might have been your intent, but that's not what the law is. So I don't remember that
Well, if it's
discussion.
not what the law is, then why are we having to change it?
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Surville.
Thank you. To answer Senator Peterson's question, I think this just makes clear that preliminary and permanent injunctions are in. Right now, the law just says when the court grants an injunction.
Okay.
That's my review.
I'll make one last point, but here's my point. If you get an injunction and somebody appeals it, then I put this law in about 5 years ago that's an expedited process, and I believe it's 15 days, and you have to get the transcript to the Supreme Court, and you have to file the briefing schedule is very finite. And the whole point is so you have an immediate finality as to whether or not that preliminary injunction is in place. If you make it go to the Court of Appeals, then you mess up that whole process. So it was always my intention to have that exempted from the Court of Appeals jurisdiction.
I get that, Senator Peterson, but when you read the section without the italicized language, it looks like and the injunction on line 15 goes to the Court of Appeals on line 18 under the existing language.
That's right, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So we're it is simply applying what is already the law for an injunction. It clarifies it, that it applies to both preliminary and permanent injunctions.
So in other words, you'd have to go through 2 levels of appeals. All right, we're gonna either change that now or we'll change it on the floor, folks. So, your choice.
Well, the question, then you'd be introducing a substantive change to the law.
Well, I'd hate to do that, Senator Dees.
No, I'm telling you, let's let her explain the rest of the changes that are being made to this code section. And then when we have a general discussion of the bill, if you want to talk about that, we can.
Okay.
Ms. Mundy?
Yeah.
Sure, thank you.
Go ahead.
Sure. So Romanet 4 at line 16 is an addition, and this is designed, this goes back to what I said earlier, this is designed to reflect that this statute doesn't just deal with injunctions, it also deals with these new immunity appeals. So the reference here is to 8.01/675.1, I'm sorry, 0.5. That is the immunity statute, but we would ask that it also state subsection B, as in boy, of that section, because that's the provision in that statute that deals with the immunity appeals. So simply clarifying, helpful to the practitioner and to the courts to know what exactly, what this statute governs. The next change is on line 25. This is just simply deleting irrelevant language. It references again the injunction, and this statute is now much broader because it also covers the immunity appeals as well as the injunction appeals. The next change comes at line 35, and this is to reflect a change in the law that was enacted earlier this year in SB 1261, where injunction appeals, you used to be able to pick one justice of the Supreme Court and file your petition with that justice, essentially. In SB 1261, it changed that procedure. It now requires that there be 3 judges on the Court of Appeals or 3 justices on the Supreme Court. So this is simply language to reflect a change that's already been made, that it's not 1, it's 3. So those are the changes recommended to that statute. The next 2 statutes, this deals with a substantive change. And both of these statutes deal with extensions of time. The way that these were drafted, it got flagged by a number of different attorneys, and specifically the VBA. And the concern is that it was basically the way the rules of court for the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court are set up is that the standard for granting an extension of time is for good cause shown. That's the standard. But this legislation, and there are another 2 spots where it also happened, now changes it to attain the ends of justice. And the language attain the ends of justice actually are words of significant import in the appellate world. The Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals have interpreted that term very, very narrowly. It basically means you have to have a miscarriage of justice. It is an extremely high standard. So although attain the ends of justice may seem like it's a very lenient standard, it is not. It is the highest standard that's known in the appellate world. So if the intent was to have the extension standard be the same that it is already in the rules of court, and to provide for a good cause showing, that is the recommendation that is being made, is to change it from attain the ends of justice to for good cause shown, which we think will permit there to be more appeals heard on the merits.
Next.
Okay, the next one is 801-675.6 jurisdictional amount. This is simply a cleanup to reflect that we no longer have petitions for appeal in civil cases. We now have appeals of right. And so it basically does a few things. It reflects that this just applies to civil cases, obviously, because we're dealing with the jurisdictional amount, and also reflects that it's not a petition, it's an appeal of right. So just a cleanup. The next one is the appeal bond statute 676.1. This is basically a catch-all statute dealing with all matters for appeal bonds. On line 77, there is a suggestion for a new provision that will simply acknowledge what's already occurred, which is that there are no appeal bonds required in criminal cases anymore. So no cost bond and no suspension bond. So the language that is proposed is reflected in a new section A1. And the one change, Kristen Walsh alerted me to this morning, is to delete the language pursuant to 19.2, 322.1. We agree with that due to some of the other changes that are made that's not necessary anymore. So it would simply just, the second sentence would say a suspension bond is not required in criminal appeals. The other change to the statute is section P as in Paul, line 183. And again, this is the extension standard, and we're suggesting that the attain the ends of justice language be deleted and replaced with for good cause shown. And this deals with the time for filing security for an appeal. The next provision is 17.1403, and this deals with the new oral argument standard that came out in SB 1261. Under SB 1261, the legislature provided for 2 exceptions to oral argument in the Court of Appeals, and provides that the Court of Appeals can dispense with oral argument if the panel unanimously determines that the appeal is wholly without merit, or if the dispositive issues in the case have been authoritatively decided and the appellant has not argued for an extension or modification of the law. The suggestion here is that an additional third category be provided for when oral argument can be bypassed, and that's when the parties are in agreement that argument is not necessary. This is not really a very significant change because under the rules of court, parties can already waive oral argument, and if both parties waive oral argument, there obviously doesn't need to be oral argument. And there can be also other good reasons why parties might not want the expense of oral argument, or other reasons that could be client-based decisions. So this simply reflects what the rules already provide. The next one is 17.1403. This deals with the appellate jurisdiction for the Court of Appeals, and this is a substantive change, but one that comes, I guess, in a technical clothing. We are proposing at line 215 a new paragraph 5, but this is really not new language. This appears to have been an accidental omission when SB 1261 was shifting what was the Supreme Court's jurisdiction into the Court of Appeals' jurisdiction. And this provision was, pre-2022, this provision was in the appellate jurisdiction statute for the Supreme Court, but it didn't get carried over to the Court of Appeals appellate jurisdiction statute. This was flagged through Boyd Graves. This permits an appeal of an interlocutory decree or order involving an equitable claim that involves money to be paid, the possession or title of property to be changed, or when there has been an adjudication of the principles of the cause. It's not frequently used, but it's used enough where it was raised as a concern. And we recommend that this be added back in, just simply, it was an accidental omission with the legislation. 17.1408, this is another one of those good cause standards. This deals with the time for filing, the notice of appeal, the opening brief, and the petition. So again, we would just recommend good cause shown standard. Turning to 19.2, 321.1, which deals with motions in the Court of Appeals for a delayed appeal in criminal cases. These are some pretty technical amendments. You will see here on line 238 There is a new Romanet 3 that would permit a motion for a delayed appeal if a case has been dismissed in part because at least one assignment of error did not adhere to the proper form or procedures. This language actually comes from the companion and related statute dealing with delayed appeals in the Supreme Court, which is the statute that follows right after this. This is language that appears in the Supreme Court statute. We're simply asking that this also be included in the Court of Appeals statute as an additional basis for a delayed appeal in a criminal case. Also dealing with Romanet 4, this simply also matches up with the Supreme Court statute. And there was one change. Ms. Walsh alerted me this morning. There was a request that the part of that says been denied should be deleted. But this is cleanup language as well, and simply rewording the way that was written. The related statute is the next one, 19.2, 321.2. This is the delayed appeal in the criminal cases. And line 275, simply deleting a comma because the way that the statute is written with the comma is not clear. And so the deletion of the comma is intended to clarify the statute. And I believe that those are all the changes.
Thank you, Ms. Mundy. This could have been 3 or 4 different bills altogether. Are there questions, additional questions from Ms. Mundy? Senator Peters?
Yeah, let me get back to the first paragraph. And I think my former law partner has reminded me that while I talked about amending that, sometimes you talk about something and you think you did it and it turns out you didn't do it. Well, that seemed like that happened to me in 2021. But I'd stick with the original point under 8.01-626. When you get a preliminary injunction or one is obtained against your client, you need to get that reviewed immediately, and you don't need to go through an intermediate step, which is what the Court of Appeals effectively is. So I would revert back to how we were prior to January 1, 2022, which is to say 18 days ago, that we just simply take where it says Court of Appeals and make that Supreme Court, which would be lines 15 through 24, and that would then render moot the rest of that code section because the Court of Appeals would have no role.
If that's a motion, I second it.
All right, well, that's a motion. And then I'd strike 25 through 38. So that's a motion.
You've got the Court of Appeals. That language is the Court of Appeals is mentioned on line 18 and on line 19.
Right, change that to Supreme Court. So
Okay.
basically, it would be back to how it was that under 626, you go straight to the Supreme Court if there's an injunction.
Mr. Chairman, I would resist that. It changes everything because the Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court is discretionary.
John, it's not discretionary under the statute. It's not.
One reason we're having the Court of Appeals is to make these decisions, and the concept of the Supreme Court would be discretionary.
It's not discretionary. It's not discretionary under the statute. It wasn't before 2021. It's an automatic review.
I'd resist that. We decided not to do it when we passed this to begin with.
We've got a motion and a second, so is there further discussion or are there more questions? We've got a motion and a second to amend the bill on lines 15 through 24, that paragraph to change the Court of Appeals, which appears in 2 places, to Supreme Court.
Right.
And then strike lines 25 through 38.
Right.
That's the motion. All in favor?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Servo.
I'm sorry, this is a big change, and it might have merit, but I'm not. If we're doing surgery on this, it's not clear to me that what happens when the Court of Appeals is done with it. Is there language in the code that says that a denied injunction, that the Supreme Court even has jurisdiction to hear
That's
a
what
denied?
the statute is, Scott.
I'm sorry. Okay, we're skipping that. Right. So, let me ask counsel this. Is there anything in the code about bonds or anything else that has to change as a result of this? Because often when you get a preliminary injunction, the circuit court also orders a bond. And
That's set by the circuit court.
Mr. Chairman. Can I suggest that we take the bill back for the day and try to talk through some of these changes, work through them?
I would suggest that this should be a new bill. This, what he's talking about is a significant change. Should be a separate bill
Well,
entirely.
this bill's in front of me, Your Honor. And you know what? We changed a lot of things last year and we had very few questions. So now you're getting questions.
Well, this is a cleanup bill, that's all it is, and if you do this, it needs a new bill, total new discussion. I suggest Senator Peterson introduce another bill. I'll be happy to, if you want to get a late bill filed, we could do that later, but this is a cleanup bill. We're gumming it up by getting into something of substance like this.
What's the pleasure of the committee? We have an amendment before us, and it's been properly seconded, and
I have a substitute bill, motion, and that's that the bill be reported with the changes that were already discussed.
well, I think we have to take up the amendment before we get to the reporting.
All right, why don't we do this? I don't want to get in a fight with my chairman. Can we do this? I will, if y'all give me leave, I'll introduce it. I'll ask for a request on the floor tomorrow to put a bill in on that.
It needed another bill.
I don't want to get crosswise with the chairman, but I will tell you, this paragraph it is right now is just, it's not feasible.
Well,
And we did not discuss this last year. Thank you very little.
Again.
So are you withdrawing the amendment?
I will withdraw it at this point.
And you'll withdraw the second. So,
I move that the bill pass.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chair, Kristen has some technical amendments.
Okay.
So this easy bill is not easy.
Well, Monica, Miss Monday, she listed out the amendments. I just didn't know if you wanted me to read them with the line numbers so that the committee was aware of where they were. There are 4 amendments.
Tell us where the amendments are, Kristen. I heard her talk, and I'm not sure I heard her talk about amendments.
The first is on line 17. After 2, insert subsection B of. The next is on line 78. After costs, insert strike pursuant to 19.2, 322.1. The next is on line 239. After Romanet 4, strike been denied or. And on line 243, after dismissed, strike or denied.
Okay, I think the amendment's been distributed now. Does everybody understand the amendments? Do I have a motion to adopt them in a block? Is there a second? Okay, all in favor of adopting these amendments in a block, say aye. Aye. Okay, we have these amendments adopted. Senator Peterson is withdrawing his amendment. Is there a motion on the bill?
I move that the bill as amended be reported.
Is there a second? Okay. Were there other people that needed to be heard on this bill? Okay. Please open the roll, vote yes if you want the bill to be reported.
One moment. Ayes 10, noes 1, 4 abstentions.
Mr. Chairman, you have a little work to do on the floor, looks like.
Okay.
Okay, you have more bills, Mr. Chair?
I have 2 more bills. The Department of Forensic Sciences has requested the bill that be which number bill is this?
Mr. Chair, Senate Bill 150.
Senate Bill 150. Okay. And Senate Bill 150, the Department of Forensic Science is here to explain the bill. The Director Jackson, I believe, is here. Who's here? Yeah. Come on. There we go.
Thank you, Senator. I am Linda Jackson. I'm the Director of the Department of Forensic Science, and I appreciate his willingness to carry our agency bill. This bill replaces references in the Code of Virginia to the LIDS system, which is the Local Inmate Data System, with the newly created DFS DNA Databank Sample Tracking System. LIDS is an older system, and we have developed a new system paid for with federal grant funding, which will allow for when law enforcement or corrections people need to figure out if a lawfully owed DNA sample is already in the data bank, it will have real-time information of the samples in the data bank for that checking, and it also allows for a pre-log functionality that will allow people to put the information about the defendant in the arrestee or a convicted offender into the system electronically. So it's it's just making those changes in the code because the old system was specifically named.
Move to report.
Or are there those in the public who need to be heard on this bill?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in favor of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Is there anyone in the room who needs to be heard on the bill? Yes, ma'am.
I will say that Robin DeSocio, who is the executive director of the Compensation Board, who currently runs the LIDS system, stayed on until 3:30 or until just very recently when she needed to leave for another meeting, and they are in favor.
Okay, but the bill's before the committee. Do I have a motion?
Move to report.
Yeah, move to report.
Senator Morrissey has a question.
I have one very brief question. First of all, thank you for all the work you do at Division of Forensic Science. This question will only take 10 seconds and it has nothing to do with this bill, but I've been wanting to ask it for months. Can the Division of Forensic Science extract DNA evidence from the remains of somebody who has been cremated?
That's an irrelevant question, Senator Morrissey. The bill's before the committee. I would ask the clerk to open the roll, and Senator Morrissey, you can take up that question offline.
Can you tell me what the answer is?
I will.
Okay.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Senate Bill 138 is your last bill, Senator Edwards.
Yeah, this has to do with relating to discovery in criminal cases that for any discovery materials or evidence that the accused is permitted to inspect and review, the accused may request the Commonwealth to provide a copy or photograph of such discovery materials or evidence, and the Commonwealth shall provide such copies or photographs to the accused or his counsel. It could be done by, fax or email, something like that.
The only thing I would ask, Senator, Mr. Chair, is does this bill make any provision for the Commonwealth to be compensated or reimbursed for expenses?
What it does is prevent the defense attorney from traveling an hour, in some cases, to show up at some Commonwealth attorney's office to get a copy of it. And they could do it by fax or email, which calls it zero.
I get that, but does it allow the Commonwealth attorney to charge for their copies?
No, nor does the defendant have to pay the time of a witness or the police officer to testify against the defendant.
Mr.
Chairman.
Mr. Senator Surville, then Senator Obenshain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I saw this and I agree it's a problem. There's several of the offices I've dealt with in the past would not let you copy anything, and so I would have to sit there and dictate it into my phone and then get my secretary to type it.
That's exactly the problem.
The one question or issue I have with your bill, which I think would probably help it a little bit, maybe deal with Senator Deeds' question, is I think that instead of a defense counsel, as the bill is written, being able to sort of require them to give them paper, I think a Commonwealth attorney would like to give it to them electronically. That ought to be okay also. But I don't think the bill really is written to say that.
It says provide, it doesn't say how, but if you want to put that in as electronically or in however way, that's fine with me. It's a friendly amendment. In fact, I talked to some Commonwealth attorneys about this very issue. And I don't know why it doesn't already mean you can do it by fax or email or something like that.
Mr. Chairman, that's how it's being done now, is electronically.
Mostly.
That's what I'm getting.
Senator Obenshain.
Well, I don't know how much more we want to add to the workload and the burden of the Commonwealth's Attorney's offices. Senator Morrissey just pointed out that it's going to take a while for the changes associated with judge sentencing to work their way through the system. We just heard Ms. Harrison testify that they've experienced a 300% increase in their office's workload as a result of changes that we just made last year. And heck, now we are taking personnel from the office and dedicating them to making copies for every criminal defendant whose case that they are handling. And yet, give them a break. I mean, this is crazy. If we're going to add this to the burden that we've already added on top of them and expect them to keep our community safe, I don't see how we're going to do it.
Senator Obenchain, I'd say that this simply requires everybody in the state to do exactly what your Commonwealth Attorney's been doing for the last umpteen years.
Exactly.
Makes the file so much and make the copies for
They make copies for me.
It says for any.
It's because they know who you are. Congratulations.
Let me read, Mr. Chairman. It says specifically, for any discovery, materials, or evidence that the accused is permitted to inspect and copy and review. You're permitted to do it anyway. So what's the problem with faxing it or something?
Senator Norman.
Mr. Chairman, I'm marveling we're getting wrapped around the axle on this. And for those of us that practice this kind of law, it's kind of nice to have that information. So I'm just saying, can't there be some very modest language in there that says that if expenses are incurred, that the Commonwealth Attorney's Office shall receive reasonable compensation?
Nah. They're going to charge you an arm and a leg. It's bad enough to have to go there.
Mr. Chairman.
But an hour drive and make copies yourself and then bring them back, come back? Are you kidding?
Mr.
Anyway,
Chair.
go ahead. Senator Searle.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Morrissey's got a question.
It's not a question, just a practical comment. It's not just you, Senator Deeds, that would get a copy of it, but in many of the jurisdictions, many of the Commonwealth attorneys will say, here, defense attorney, sit down at this table. You want to copy something, there's a copying machine right over there, and they do it. There are a few that say, no, there's no copy machine, I'm not going to copy it, transcribe it. Imagine transcribing a report that's 2, 3, 4 pages long. This is so practical and makes so much common sense to simply let the defense attorney copy it, and if they're going to charge him a couple of dollars, as Senator Norman suggested, pay the $2.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, I think what the chair's bill's getting at is, if you're sitting in Roanoke and your case is in Pulaski or Wythe County, instead of going down there and going through the file yourself, this bill is about allowing a defense lawyer to ask the Commonwealth Attorney to go through the file and send you the discoverable material. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
They got to go through it anyway.
It may be, but I'll tell you this, I think most defense attorneys are not going to say, they're going to file their motion for discovery, and then they're going to go and they're going to take that file and they're going to go through it, as most prosecutors now do. They call it open file, and they're going to make copies of what they want. But
Senator Survell's got it.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I can just tell you, like in the last 2 or 3 years, almost every office I deal with just sends me an email with a link, and I download all the docs, and that's it. Most of them. I can't remember if all of them are doing that now or not, but it's all being done digitally. And again, I really think this needs some language right at the end or something that just says that the Commonwealth shall provide copies or photographs to the accuser or his counsel, or provide the information in electronic format at their option, or something like that, so that I've met a few lawyers and a couple people in this body who aren't very good with electronics and like to get their things on paper instead of electronically. I could see some older lawyers saying, I don't want a digital thing. I want to have it on paper. And the way this reads, it has to be paper. And Mr. Chairman, I would also just say with regard to a reasonable fee, I've met some medical companies lately that have an interesting idea what medical fees are in my personal injury cases. And I could see judges having to intervene and argue about what's a reasonable fee or not. We have some public defenders' offices that are getting in interesting fights with Commonwealth attorneys. That's just a whole other thing to fight about. And And I just think that there shouldn't be a charge for getting something you're constitutionally entitled to.
Yeah. On line 23, I'll be happy to put in as shall provide electronically or otherwise such copies.
Okay, you've got the amendment. Does everybody understand what it does?
Second.
Got a motion, Senator Edwards' motion, Senator Servell second, that amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Are there additional amendments to bills before you? Are there those in the Zoom room or in the room that need to speak to the bill, for or against?
Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised at this moment.
Okay, we've got a couple of folks that want to speak to the bill.
Afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dan Goldman. I'm with Justice Ford, Virginia. In my experience, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. In my experience, we have to have these copies. The Commonwealth's attorneys already need to go through the effort of providing the materials for us to review them. But the issue of having to transcribe, as we all know, can take just forever, especially in voluminous files. And not to mention that I have to be able to present that evidence in the redacted form as 3A11 allows to my client. I need to be able to, I can't just ask him to trust me that this is the evidence that the Commonwealth has against him. I need to be able to show that to him and go through that because I need to be able to get his input on reviewing that. He's in many cases the best person situated to review that discovery and help us make sense of that. And so it's absolutely crucial that we have copies of this. I think it's true that in most of the jurisdictions where I practice, we are allowed to get copies. We're provided electronic copies. Sometimes we're provided paper copies. But there are jurisdictions where I'm asked to go and sit in a room and just review and take notes, and it takes forever. And when we deal with, the volume in public defender offices, the number of cases where they would have to do that, and when we deal with it in private practice on court-appointed cases, the amount of time that it takes to sit there and go through that, it's very easy to very quickly run through the amount that's allotted for court appointment in cases here in Virginia. So I'd ask that the bill with the electronic amendment be supported.
Thank you very much. Next.
Bethany Harrison with the Virginia Association of Commonwealth Attorneys. We are opposed to this legislation. There are no exceptions in this for copies. There are items that a defense attorney is entitled to inspect that should not be copied, such as child pornography or criminal information, Virginia Criminal Information Network, criminal record material. A lot of these issues, as we pointed out, are already addressed in our revised Rule of Discovery, Rule 3A11, that has a laundry list of items the defense counsel is entitled to inspect and copy, and even provides a remedy if there's failure to disclose, and a provision for if the defense attorney needs it, if it's material to their preparation and the request is reasonable. I would also offer that perhaps for this expense issue, because the city of Lynchburg, we have a case management system that allows us to give electronic discovery, and that's the way that we comply with open files, as you gave examples of. But not every jurisdiction can afford such a case management system or afford to make all these copies. You could treat it like we do FOIA laws and say actual costs for the copies can be charged. So for all those reasons, we oppose this bill.
Thank you very much. Next.
Thank you. I'm Clarissa Berry. I'm the Commonwealth's attorney in Madison County, a small jurisdiction of about 13,000 people on 29. And yes, I've seen a couple of you. I've seen some people in some places. I'm not here. I mean, I'm here with FACA, but I'm not here with FACA. Being from a small jurisdiction, and I will say that we're very fortunate that we are well funded by our locality. So we do have some of the things like case management, but we are a rural jurisdiction, and I mean, we barely have internet in Madison and a lot of the places. Senator Edwards is laughing because he knows that it's true. The electronic evidence part of it should not be kind of glossed over, because one of the concerns is that, yes, we send a lot of our discovery either by a direct link from evidence.com, or we use OneDrive or Dropbox. But at this point, we have items of evidence that are in the terabytes. And so there is no way that I can send that evidence over the internet. I'm going to have an external drive. And for those cases, I mean, the external drives, $100, $200 a pop. And so to say that the Commonwealth and then the localities, because I know the COMP Board's not going to give me any money for that, is responsible for bearing that burden, is quite frankly a little unfair. And the way that that works in Madison is that we talk to the defense attorney about it, right? And we make you can borrow mine for now and then bring it back, or you buy one and I'll fill it up and I'll give it back to you. You know, we work that out, and maybe we just do things differently in Madison, I don't know. The other issue is with charging. We don't have, as a constitutional officer, as a Commonwealth attorney, I have no way to take money from anyone. There's no money in my office. I don't have an invoicing system. I don't have a billing system. And so that implementation would be an additional cost that the locality would likely end up bearing. So if you have any questions, I'm happy, but I'm also happy to just sit down.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the bill is before the committee. Got a motion?
Second.
A motion to report and re-refer to finance has been moved and seconded. Are there additional motions, or is there additional discussion? Please open the roll, vote yes if you want the bill to pass, and go to finance.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all.
Are the bills that I've got, the last two bills in the committee?
Senator, no, they're not. We have two from Senator Stanley and and one from Senator Norman, if I'm not mistaken. Two for you. All right. So what does that mean? Can I go? Are you going to no, I'm asking. Do I have to declare that? Oh, and one for Senator Morrissey. Pardon me, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that education, and what I am offering is nowhere near as erudite as Senate Bill 149 that has been brought to me by the city of Hampton. It's fairly direct. What it does is it makes a provision in the law, and I have a representative from Hampton that would like to address it very briefly, but it provides that a juvenile or parent or guardian or custodian of juvenile, if there's no other law that permits the withholding of information in these civil cases, that they will have access to it. You ask, well, why do we need to do this on it? When I started out as an attorney, I did insurance defense work, and what happens is that you try to get information from FOIA on juveniles that are injured in accidents or wrongful deaths, and it requires that you go to court and get a court order. Well, in a lot of instances, like in a personal injury case situation, that there is no active action, civil action that is pending, and therefore you can't get the court order. Fairly simple. There you are. Come on up, young lady. Tell them what I didn't, and make it really simple.
I will. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Lola Rodriguez Perkins. I serve as a senior deputy city attorney for the city of Hampton, and in that capacity, I oversee our FOIA coordinator and oversee FOIA responses. Over the past 7 years that I have been in this role, we have had numerous instances of parents wanting to get reports involving their children when their children were victims, and we have been unable to release those reports. We've had former juveniles who are now adults who are seeking to join the military, and military recruiters are asking for law enforcement records from incidents that occurred when they were juveniles many years before. We have been unable to release those reports. And we have encountered this with respect to, as Senator Norman said, civil matters, and also in the context of insurance companies and individuals being unable to make insurance claims because, again, they cannot get those records. What we have found is that the court order requirement is not simply a burden, but there is not a mechanism unless there is a current litigation ongoing for an individual to just go down to the courthouse and get that court order that enables the records to be released. Happy to answer any questions and certainly want to thank Senator Norman for carrying this legislation on behalf of Hampton. Thank you.
Any discussion, any questions of the patron, of the speaker? Is there a motion?
I'd move to report, please, sir.
Is there a second? Second. Then 2 or 3 seconds, okay. All in favor of the motion to report the bill, doesn't have to go to finance.
Does not, Mr. Chair.
All in favor of reporting the bill of Senator Norman's Senate Bill 149, vote aye, all opposed no.
Cree, would you vote me, please?
You can move from right there.
I can? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it very much. And Senator Stanley, thank you very much.
Ayes 15, noes 0.
Bill is reported. Thank you. Senator Deeds has 2 bills. You want to do Stanley? Oh, Stanley? All right. We can kill yours really quickly. All right, Senator Stanley. He's got a bill, Senate Bill 79, Class 1 felonies, mandatory minimum.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Senate Committee, I will not bore you with an incredible long speech about my bills that I usually do. I will try to be as brief because you've heard this argument from me on the floor of the Senate. You understand that Senator Servell, I worked, of course, in a bipartisan fashion with the ending of the death penalty in the Commonwealth of Virginia. However, we disagreed, not sharply, but we disagreed on the term of imprisonment that should be imposed if the death penalty, if aggravated murder, Class 1 felony murder is determined and the defendant is found guilty. This is my attempt, again, to try to strike reason and balance in the fact that we have eliminated the death penalty here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This does not seek to reinstitute it. However, if someone commits a felonious act, a Class 1 felony under 18.231, under the factors, and they are found guilty, then they should spend the rest of their natural lives incarcerated and never see freedom again. For the freedom that they took under the circumstances that are what we call aggravated, I do believe we should then make that pact with the public that we will protect them in that way. And so that is the bill, Mr. Chairman. You've heard me make this request on the floor when I attempted to amend the former Servell Stanley bill. And so here I am again. I am a glutton, but I'm a glutton for life punishment. How's that?
Right now, we have this only for the killing of a police officer. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, I would answer the gentleman by saying exactly right. We do have life without parole only for killing of a police officer.
Yeah, and I think I voted with Servell against your bill last year. I would be willing to accept a modification for a Timothy McVeigh type situation, multiple murders.
Mass murder.
Yeah, mass murders. The only thing is once you start down this with, at least, and this is just my opinion, then people will be coming in every year. Like I said, the exception I'd be willing to make would be for mass murderers.
Mr. Chairman, I would accept the friendly amendment from my good friend.
But if you're going to leave it, but this takes what you've done out.
Certainly. At this point, I'm of a mindset that aggravated murder is aggravated murder. But right now, under the current scenario, Mr. Chairman and Senator Sasslaw, I would answer the gentleman by saying the Timothy McVeigh can qualify for parole. If I can prevent someone that kills more than one person from ever seeing the light of day of freedom for the freedoms that they took away, then that is a step forward. Otherwise, Mr. Chairman, I tend to look at this committee and understand where my bill is going.
Well,
if I do not accept it,
If the
right?
definition of mass murder is 2 or more, or 3 or more, I would take 2. I'll offer up that amendment.
And Mr. Chairman, I would not object in the way that you so vociferously objected to every offered amendment to your bills. I find any time that we can try to work together and strengthen our laws to be a good thing, even if I have to lose the others.
I just simply feel that if you kill 2 people, willful, deliberate, murder of 2 or more people, then you lose your right to parole ever.
Certainly. And I don't disagree with you.
That's not what the bill says.
I know.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask then to work with Senator Sassalaw, as I always treasure and value the opportunity to do so. I'd be willing to carry it by for a week and see if we could have Mr. Qualiato offer up something, or or my good friend Scott Serville can just kill it right here, and then I'll be back next year with the same thing. So hopefully you and I can dance like this again. We've done it all.
Senator, what is intellectual disability? Is that
serving on this committee, Mr. Chairman?
no, on line 15, to be a person is not determined to be a person with an intellectual disability defined in whatever it is. That is that like the low IQ, or is that
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It comports with existing law.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Yeah. What is that person? Charles, what does that mean? Intellectual disability in this bill.
Mr. Chairman, that is defined by code. It is a disability originating before the age of 18 years, characterized concurrently by significant sub-average intellectual functioning, as demonstrated on some performance tests, and significant limitations in adaptive behavior as expressed in conceptual, social, and practical adaptive skills.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Serval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listen, I appreciate all the love and dialogue going on here, but we debated this ad nauseum last year, and to revisit the policy that just went into effect 6 months ago, something we normally don't talk about. Number one, number two, I just say to Senator Saslaw that in my experience, 9 times out of 10, when somebody commits mass murder, the United States attorney usually ends up taking that over, and the federal government has a way of dealing with those situations, as opposed to them being something a Commonwealth attorney ends up dealing with. So at least if it's like 3 or 4 or 5 people or so, that option is always available. But in any event, we've already talked about this last year at length. If we're going to just keep revisiting stuff again and again and again.
You have a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
PBI the bill.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Serville, Senator Serville ignores the DC sniper. He just thinks that the feds picked that up. Didn't happen.
Passed by indefinitely. Is there? I'm sorry. All right, call the roll.
Can't have a substitute motion? Yes or no?
No, just get rid of it. Get rid of it. No.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
9 to 6. Okay, now you have another one. Senator.
Sure, do you want to kill these in order, just by the block? Or?
Mandatory minimum retirement age.
Right, Mr. Chairman, having voted on the prevailing side, I ask we reconsider the vote by which it was passed by indefinitely.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second. Sure.
All in favor of the motion to reconsider, vote aye.
Ayes 15, noes 0.
Okay, is there a motion?
And move the bill pass.
Motion to pass the bill.
Okay, substitute motion to PBI.
Substitute motion to pass the, so the substitute motion should be voted on. Should the bill be passed by indefinitely? If so, vote aye. If not, vote no.
Ayes 8, noes 7.
8 to 7.
Well, it's kind of like getting hit by a car and then they put it in reverse just to get you one more time.
I thought that's what happened. You got it?
The thump, the thump. That's what it was.
I just thought there would be a moment of intelligence.
I missed you guys so much.
Senator Stanley, you got this other bill?
Yeah. Why don't you, is there a motion? Mr. Chair, members of the.
This Senator Stanley, this bill is very simple. It just raises the mandatory retirement age from 73 to 75 for judges.
Mr. Chairman, I answered the gentleman, Senator Deeds, by saying exactly right. I think here we have some very capable judges, especially in some rural areas that we need to kind of keep on the bench because we don't have a dugout full of good replacements.
I will
Also,
move to report the bill.
but also it would allow those that would be coming through this cycle to actually stay on the bench so as well.
I'll
That's the
second
only-
it.
Mr. Chairman, this needs to go to finance.
Mr. Chairman, I think I need therapy every time I come to this committee.
Yeah, all right, Senator Morrissey has something to say. Senator Morrissey has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know it's late in the day.
Dude.
And I know people want to move on, but with regard to increasing the age, I remember my colleague, I believe it was Senator Serbo, that said it was either in the House, I think it was in the House, when we moved to raise the age from 70 to 73, saying something along the lines of, if anything, we need to move it back. Your bill, Senator Stanley, is to move the mandatory retirement age up 2 years. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentleman by saying it is moving it from 73 to 75. We are living longer, and quite frankly, Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentleman by saying it would have a negative impact on our budget, saving almost over $1 million, and because less retirement would be taken out of the VRS, because most of them are maxed out anyway. So we're paying them regular salary. We're not having the change in transformation. It works to our benefit. It's 75. There are 6 states that have the mandatory retirement age of 75. I believe Vermont is the highest with the age of 90. I am not asking for 90. I'm asking for 2 years. And specifically, we have some very good judges that should stay where they are.
Okay, any more discussion on this bill? Does anybody would like to speak for the bill? Did anybody ask you to put it in the bill? You just came up.
I'm sorry?
Did anybody specifically ask you for the bill?
Senator Edwards, you forgot we were in the hallway at a courthouse and you said you better put that 75 bill in so I can be a judge?
That ain't gonna happen. All right.
Oh, it should have been 78, then I'm sorry. No, Mr. Chairman, I did, actually, I've had members of my own bar in my locality in Franklin County, especially we have a judge that is not only more delightful and more learned and more fair, probably the best judge.
I love that judge too.
And so I would say, I could say that my entire county bar has asked me to come with this bill.
Yeah, but it's.
Rather than pick a new judge.
Statewide, it's not just one judge.
Yeah, because I couldn't get it passed that way.
Is there any further discussion? Is there a motion?
Somebody made the motion.
I'm sorry?
There was a move to report in a second already.
I couldn't hear you. Sure.
The motion was made to report and re-refer to finance, Mr. Chair.
Okay, motion's been made to report and re-refer to finance. Is there another, okay, substitute motion?
What is wrong with you?
All right, Senator Sherrill moves to PBI the bill and is seconded. All in favor of the motion to PBI the bill, vote aye. All opposed, no.
Wow. You hate old people.
Ayes 12, noes 3.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
12 to 3. Come back another year. Okay, now, what else?
Mr. Chair, I've got 2 bills, and if it's all right with you, I'll do them from up here. I don't think either one of them is going to take a lot of time.
Okay.
I don't know that they're controversial. Senate Bill 291 initially was a request of the Indigent Defense Council. It will allow investigators for both defense lawyers and prosecutors' offices to serve papers, to serve subpoenas. And it takes out the requirement that they be former law enforcement officers. That will increase the ability to, especially for public defense offices, to be able to hire people.
Okay.
That's simply what the bill does.
Does anybody want to speak in favor of the bill or Patron, any questions? All right, speak in favor of the bill.
Chairman Edwards, members of the committee, Marie Jankowski, I'm the Deputy Director at the Indigent Defense Commission, and I will not waste your time. I can speak to the bill or answer any questions. I think Senator Deeds has got to the point.
Okay. Is there anybody else want to speak on the bill, one way or the other? Zoom or otherwise?
Move to report the bill, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, I'm in a Zoom land. This is John Jones.
Yeah, go to John Jones. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator Deeds. My only concern is the language on line 23 that removes the sheriff from being involved in it. That language was put in several years ago because of issues going on, and it seems to have solved a problem. And I have heard from a few sheriffs that would like to leave that language there. I'd appreciate any consideration on that. Thank you.
Which line is this? Which line?
Line 23, where it says the sheriff, the stricken language provided the sheriff of the jurisdiction where the process has agreed. We still want the sheriff to agree.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that part of the reason that language has been stricken has been there's been one sheriff in the state who has consistently resisted allowing these documents to be served, these subpoenas to be served by investigators. One sheriff in the state. Everybody else has gone along. Everybody else, and this language being stricken, so we no longer have that problem in that populous jurisdiction.
Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Okay. Is there a motion?
Move to report.
Been moved and seconded that the bill be reported. All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, no.
It's 15, no 0.
15 to nothing.
The last bill, Mr. Chair, is...
Bill passes 15 to nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last bill I've got is Senate Bill 299, which builds on some work we did in 2019 after we had a study of forensic nursing that highlighted the shortage of qualified nurses to provide services, which resulted in survivors of sexual assault having to travel long distances and visit more than one facility oftentimes to obtain a sexual assault examination. So this bill increases the percentage of money generated by the fixed fee assessments for misdemeanors and traffic infractions to the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Victim Fund. It directs the Department of Criminal Justice Service to develop guidelines for distribution from the funds to sexual assault service providers for salary and equipment for sexual assault examiners, with priority given to rural and underserved communities. Every survivor of sexual assault ought to be treated with dignity and be able to access care, and perpetrators need to be brought to justice, and that's what this bill's about.
Okay, thank you.
I think there are people in Zoom land that want to speak to this, and apparently there's a prosecutor that wants to speak to this.
Any questions of a patron? Okay, go ahead, Prosecutor Lynchburg.
Bethany, and we support Senate Bill 299. As Senator Deeds said, the work of SANE nurses is critical to evidence collection as well as support for our victims of crime. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead. Madison County, Prosecutor.
Yes, Madison County. We don't have a doctor's office in Madison County right now. Fun facts to know and tell. We are between two hospitals, UVA and Culpeper. UVA does have a SANE nurse program, an excellent program, but it takes a while for people to get there. Culpeper is our closest hospital. They don't have a SANE nurse. We go to Fredericksburg. So this is incredibly important. We've already been in communication with our free clinic, our health department, figuring out a way that we could help this be even closer to the folks in Madison.
How far is Charlottesville? Just from where you are.
From my house, it'll take me about 45 minutes to get to UVA, and I live right in the town of Madison.
And Fredericksburg?
An hour plus.
Okay, all right, thanks. Okay, any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I think there are people in Zoom land who want to
Yes,
speak.
Mr. Chair, there's Camille Cooper. Would you please unmute?
Hello, Mr. Chairman. My name is Camille Cooper. I'm Vice President of Public Policy for the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. We operate the National Sexual Assault Hotline, and we serve about 27,000 people a month. In 2019, the Joint Commission on Health did a study on forensic nursing in Virginia, and what they found out as a result of that study is that there was a bit of a crisis in terms of a shortage of sexual assault forensic nurses. And at this point, 3 years later, we've gone from crisis to partial collapse. There's large areas of the state and the Commonwealth that have no coverage at all, including the Eastern Shore, west of the Rappahannock, Southern Virginia, and then parts of Southwest. So we have some huge gaps. We've also have had some attrition in the Central Virginia region as a result of a loss of a nurse in Charlottesville. What this bill does is it creates an allowable use under the Domestic Violence and Sexual Violence Fund to allow DCJS to establish a grant program for sexual assault nurse salaries. One of the problems that we have is that hospitals don't want to spend money on sexual assault nurses. So we really need to put some funding for salaries out into the field and allow local centers and clinics and community hospitals, especially in the rural areas, to be able to have that funding. We've changed the assessment to create some additional funding to pay for it, and we also have a stopgap measure in terms of a budget amendment for this, and we would ask you to support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Does anybody else would like to speak?
Melissa.
Okay, go ahead.
Melissa Harper, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Senator Edwards, and Senate committee members. My name is Melissa Harper, and I'm a forensic nurse. I'm employed by both Ultra Health Pediatric Forensic Nursing Department in collaboration with the Care Center, a child advocacy center located in Tazewell County, and medical consulting services located in the town of Pulaski. I live in Roanoke, and I travel 1 to 2.5 hours to work. I support Senate Bill 299, Virginia's Sexual and Domestic Violence Victim Fund, funding for sexual assault services that will provide funding for salaries and equipment for sexual assault and pediatric nurse examiners in both rural and underserved communities. As you may be aware, I serve a large, underserved, under-resourced area, many counties which are not only poverty-stricken, but double poverty-stricken and not without crime. Both of the programs I serve are first of their kind within their respective counties. There are 16 Virginia counties within the Southwest region without regular, consistent access to formal sexual assault and forensic nurse examiners and formal programs. A patient in far Southwest Lee County who is sexually assaulted may have to travel hours for sexual assault and forensic care, sometimes even having to cross state lines. Imagine being that patient or their family having to travel hours after you've just been sexually or physically abused. Currently, there are only 2 forensic nurse examiners in Pulaski County, one of which covers 152 to 160 hours each week. In the 12-county area that spans from Tazewell County to Lee County, there are only 2 adult sexual assault nurse examiners and only 1 pediatric nurse examiner. Coverage is limited to when these nurses are available. In general, there is no specialized care available to other types of crime victims in the area. The wait times to be seen can be lengthy to either be evaluated or transferred for care. I'm aware of patients who have traveled to as many as 3 ERs before finally being able to be evaluated by a competent provider of forensic care. In addition to lack of funding for staffing, items needed to care for patients can be difficult to procure. For example, HIV post-exposure prophylaxis medications that sometimes cost $3,000 or $4,000 are very expensive, and many providers do not have access to these medications within their facilities. Equipment can also be very costly to purchase. A colposcope to examine a patient for anogenital trauma after sexual assault may cost anywhere from $5,000 to $21,000, none of which do these localities have the ability to fund. I urge you to vote in favor of Senate Bill 299 as women, men, and children's health and safety depends on it.
Thank you
to the bill paper and for the opportunity to speak to each of you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else like to see anybody against the bill?
Fine.
Been moved by Senator, moved and seconded to report and re-refer to finance. All in favor of the motion, vote aye. All opposed, vote no.
Ayes 15, no 0.
15 to 0.
Mr. Chair, there is one bill still left in the docket. Senator Morrissey has a bill, Senate Bill
Yeah, I
112.
thought we would put that off till next week, if that's okay, Senator Morrissey. We do have one other thing, and that is we have two judges to deal with. It's on Monday, if you may recall, our committee considered certification of judges interviewed in December. It's been brought to my attention that certain members wish to address a couple of the judges who were removed from the block at that time. And so Senator Boysko, I believe you have.
Yes,
Judge.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move that we add Jeanette Irby onto the list of qualified judges.
Okay. And Senator, let's see, McClellan, you have one I believe you wanted to add to the list?
Yes, Mary Langer for the 13th Judicial Juvenile Domestic Relations Court.
Okay.
Mr.
This
Chair.
is a voice vote, so
Mr.
first
Chair.
of all, yes, Senator Morrissey.
Judge, excuse me, it's been a long day. Mr. Chairman, one of the members of the committee asked if I would meet with her to discuss Judge Langer, and I've agreed to do that. So could we pass that one by for the day?
No.
I'm happy to, okay.
Mr. Chair,
It's going to take some time for me to discuss Ms. Langer, but
Okay, you
I'm
don't
happy to
want
do it
put by?
right now.
Mr. Chair, if I can just respond to Senator Morrissey.
go ahead, yeah.
There's a difference between certifying someone qualified and nominating them to be appointed. And Senator Morrissey is a member of the Richmond delegation, and I will discuss whether Ms. Langer should be nominated. However, usually it is customary that if someone is going to be removed from the block for certification, that be discussed with the delegation. Judge Langer's removal was not discussed with the delegation, came as a surprise to the delegation, and her not being voted or certified as qualified is not the will of the majority of the delegation. So I think we need to distinguish between the two questions. I think we need to follow the tradition and protocol of the Senate that the delegation acts in concert. If we are going to add one judge now, we should take them both at the same time. And I don't know when the resolution needs to be finalized and on the floor, but that is why I'm making that motion at this time, because I was informed this was a time when another judge would be added.
Speaking to the motion.
Yeah, Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, there was a vetting in December, and Senator McClellan participated in some of that vetting, but left before Judge Langer was vetted, and she was extensively vetted by people from members of the court's committee, and as well as at least me from the Senate committee. And since that time, I would agree that there has not been a meeting of the Richmond delegation. But if Senator McClellan insists on going forward with it, then I will be speaking at length against her certification. When we certify a judge, we are saying, as a committee, that this person is qualified to serve as a judge in this case, juvenile and domestic relations court. I feel she is inherently unqualified, and if Senator McClellan wants to go forward with it, then I'm going to need some time to speak to it.
Okay, this is a certification. It's not the vote on the floor. That doesn't have to, we're planning to vote on certain judges anyway tomorrow, assuming the House is still in agreement to do that.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak as to the reasons why I don't believe that she should be certified or at the appropriate time? Is this the appropriate time?
Go ahead, now's the time.
All right, thank you.
Because we're certifying her.
Mr. Chairman, there are 21 categories for people, for judges that are rated by the JPE evaluation. And the last vetting, there were 50 judges. Ms. Langer, excuse me, I misspoke. Judge Langer ranked 48 out of 50. Some of the qualifications are patience. This isn't a juvenile and domestic relations court. Judge Langer rated the second lowest on the qualification the judge displays patience in the courtroom. With regard to the qualification that the judge is courteous, she ranked second out of 50. That the judge shows respect for all court participants, she ranked second from the bottom. With the qualification that the judge exhibits fairness to all party, she was the third lowest. That the judge treats all parties impartially, she was the third lowest out of 50. That the judge displays knowledge of the law, she was the fourth lowest. Faithful to the law, fourth lowest. And that the judge performs judicial duties without bias or prejudice, she was the third lowest. Now, I've just highlighted those traits that are most important for a judge serving on the bench. In 11 of those categories, she was second or third from the bottom. I don't believe that she should be qualified. And if the folks on here think that we certify somebody with those low rankings, then you've spoken. But I don't.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few points. First, we heard in, I believe it was the first meeting that this committee had, why ranking judges and their evaluation scores is not always a fair or helpful exercise. So that's point number one. So where she is on that list is you need to look at through the lens that Justice Powell provided for us at this meeting. But I think this is a larger point I want to make. This is Judge Langer's first term. I am not aware of any time when we have found a judge not qualified based on rankings for their first term without giving them an opportunity to do better. I may have left that hearing early, but I watched it. I left early because I had a doctor's appointment for the records that I could not change. And she said, Judge Langer made the point that her evaluations came as a surprise. We have heard many times how sometimes a judge, especially a new judge, doesn't always have a sense if their demeanor in the courtroom, if their perception of their demeanor or their intention of their demeanor is the same as with everyone in the courtroom. Her evaluator judge gave her glowing remarks every time she met with her. And so if she was not aware until she got this evaluation that her performance had not improved, she came before this committee, and in that interview, we collectively talked to her about how she needed to improve. Individual members of the Richmond delegation have had conversations with her about how she needs to improve. But again, we have never, as far as I am aware, and if someone can point to a time, I'm glad to hear it, found someone not to be qualified as a judge based on their evaluations at the end of their first term without an opportunity for them to be corrected. Now, we have always followed the will of the delegation. If the delegation decides not to reappoint her, that's the delegation's prerogative. To date, the delegation has not made that decision. And that is why I am moving to have Judge Langer certified as qualified today.
Any further discussion? So there's a motion.
Mr. Chair, can you remove it from the block and do it individually? I think there are two judges.
We've already done the first one, so we
Oh,
just.
we did,
just
okay.
have
So this is
one.
just for Judge Langer?
Judge Mary E. Langer.
We haven't voted on Herbie.
Didn't we? I thought we just did. I thought we were going to do it.
Mr. Chair, we did not vote on
Oh,
anyone
okay,
yet.
let's go back and do Irby, and then we can deal. All right, the first question then is Judge Janet A. Irby certified and as qualified to serve on the court? The motion, that's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, vote aye. It's a voice vote. Say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Okay? So Judge Janet A. Irby is certified as qualified. Now, the second issue would be Judge Mary E. Langer.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
I have a couple
Senator
of
Peake.
questions, if I may.
Yeah, Senator Peake.
All right. And so Senator McClellan, is it your statement here that the delegation covering where this judge sits has approved her re-nomination, recertification?
Well, we have not had an official delegation meeting and vote. In speaking with all of the members of the delegation, all of them with one exception, believe she is qualified, want her to be certified as qualified, and intend to support her for reappointment.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Well, Mr. Chair.
I would ask Senator I'm sorry.
Could I finish?
Senator Peake.
Mr. Chair, then Senator McClellan, approximately how many members of the delegation?
There are 3 in the Senate and 4 delegates: Bourne, McQuinn, Carr, Willett, and Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Then another question. This question,
Senator Peake.
I would go to Senator Deeds, who I share a bit of a territory with, and you've been here for a while. Has it been the tradition of the Senate that if the delegation approves, or is that a different situation that I have heard?
Divisions in the delegation might have been with respect to the election, not with respect to what qualification.
Just the election. Okay. And that's what I wanted
That's
to
been my
clarify.
experience anyway.
And that's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Obenchain? No? Okay. Senator Morrissey?
Inquiry. This meeting of the Richmond delegation, of which I am a member, could I ask Senator McClellan when that took place? Because I was never invited to any meeting of the delegation. I'm almost done. And further, delegates McQuinn, Adams, Bourne were not at the vetting when this took place. So I'm just wondering when this vetting by the Richmond delegation took place, which I wasn't invited to.
Senator Morrissey, the Richmond delegation did not have a formal meeting, but members of the Richmond delegation speak to each other every day, individually, collectively. They meet with judges who seek out reappointment, and in conversations with each member of the delegation, they have told me their opinion on this matter.
Final question.
Okay, Senator Morrissey.
Senator McClellan, can you tell me when you spoke with the other members, did you share with them that she ranked number 48 and 40, ranked 48 overall out of all the judges? And did you go over the qualifications like I just did with the body with these other members? Or did you just simply ask them, will they support her?
Senator Morrissey, every member of the Richmond delegation is a duly elected member of the General Assembly who can form their own opinions. I asked each member whether they supported or opposed certification and/or reappointment of Judge Langer.
Okay.
I simply asked one question. Did you share with them the JPE rankings? Yes or no?
I have disclosed to you the full extent of
All
the
right, thank you.
conversations that I have had.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, we do have a motion. Who made the motion?
Request a recorded vote?
Okay, well, we ever do that? No, huh? I don't think, we'll just,
How do we do
We'll
a voice
find
vote
out
of people that aren't here and we have proxies for?
can we do a vote? Yeah, let's do a recorded vote then.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator.
I've been here for 18 years. Never once do I remember, this is much like judicial elections. It is the tradition of the Senate that we don't undermine the election of a judge with a negative vote. If you don't like it, we leave your seat rather than cast a negative vote. I think that we're capable of conducting a voice vote in here and seeing whether whether it's close. And if it's not, then maybe we have to revisit that. But just as a procedural matter, I don't know that given the thousands of times that we have voted on individual judges, I don't remember one single time that we have ever had a recorded vote on certification of a judge, ever.
Have we ever done that? I don't.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Senator.
and I have been here since 1992. I have never heard that happen either.
Okay, we'll just do a voice vote. That's okay, unless somebody specifically wants to have one. All right. In that case, we have a motion been moved by Senator McClellan and seconded by who? Senator Boysko, that Judge Mary E. Langer be certified as qualified to sit as judge. So all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no?
No.
No, okay. All right, thank you. Okay, that's a majority. So certified, again, is not the same as elected. Okay, but she will be, if tomorrow, and it's scheduled for tomorrow, we elect judges, she would be on the ballot. Okay, it's qualified, it's certified, okay? Okay, any further discussion? Any further business to come for the body? Okay, it's only 4:32. Don't you want to stick around another 2 or 3 hours? The Judiciary Committee is adjourned.